Welcome to the virtual recreation of South Africa as we're now here at Kyalami Grand Prix circuit, taken from Kyalami, my home in Zulu. We're here for something very, very interesting tonight on the sim grid. Now, in real life, racing teams have to consistently look at budgetary factors in terms of going racing every single season. So there's always going to be that way where teams will try and find to do a bit of cost cutting and keep those costs at a minimum. And it's the same for any organisers who have to start limiting resources as they try to keep costs down while simultaneously making the racing greener and more environmentally friendly. And until now, sim racers have never had to deal with this. Welcome to the SimGrid Economy Challenge with Alex Goldschmidt and Andy McEwan with you tonight. Andy, this event is going to be rather interesting because we've got an 80-minute race, all drivers. We've got 40 plus of them here at this fantastic circuit, which is just over 4.5 kilometres long. They have to brim the tanks, and they've only got 2 sets of tyres through practice, qualifying, and the race itself. And what's more, they've got to make it to the finish line. This is going to be something that's really going to test them tonight, isn't it?
Absolutely, and probably test us as well, because when it comes to keeping on top of all of the different strategies and who actually looks the strongest out on circuit, that's going to take quite a bit of dissecting. I think it's going to be a really strange race in that the winner will almost certainly not be the car that was the fastest over the course of the 80 minutes, because you have to save fuel. We know that these cars, the GT3 cars that are being used tonight, can generally do about 65 to 70 minutes on a tank of fuel relatively easy. It's that last 10 or 15 minutes that nobody is sure of, and it will all come down to how well you've managed the fuel whilst also keeping up a reasonably strong pace in the early part of the race that will ultimately decide the winner. So one thing we can fairly confidently predict here, Alex, is it's going to go right down to the wire.
Well, it's going to go right down to fumes in those fuel tanks. Now, obviously, we've got quite a few manufacturers represented. Bentley are in here, Porsche are in here, Aston Martin, BMW, Lexus, Nissan, McLaren, Ferrari, and even there's, I mean, to be honest with you, Andy, out of the cars that are on this grid, the ones that scream fuel economy to me are the ones with the less amount of arranged cylinders. That's both the Nissan GTR, which has a 3.8 litre twin turbo V6, and then the Nissan as well. And surprisingly enough, the Mercedes Evo has not even been touched. I think these drivers now have gone, 15 of them have gone for the Bentley, which we know through previous longer stints, you've seen some drivers go on for 65, 70, even 75 minutes in one stint on a full tank of fuel. To me, the Honda and the Nissan would sound like the better alternatives because of the fact that they've got the less amount of cylinders on their respective engines.
That certainly seems to be the way of thinking, but just because all of the drivers are thinking that doesn't necessarily mean they're right, of course. I mean, this kind of thing has not been done before. They're all sort of going off maybe their experience in some of the longer 12 and 24-hour races where fuel strategy and stretching that fuel does come in handy. Some of them are really just going off what their mate said they heard someone else say was a good car on fuel mileage. So it really is a huge unknown. And yes, we have more Bentleys than anything else on the grid, but wouldn't it be hilarious if it wasn't a Bentley that managed to outlast and get to the end and win the race? We just don't know. Of course, all of the cars also have these different fuel settings, fuel richness settings that they can use. The drivers will definitely be playing around with those throughout the day. Essentially, you can have a richer fuel map that burns more fuel but allows you to go quicker. Because it's worth remembering, isn't it, Alex, that this is not just an economy run. There is a race here. And once you realise that you can get to the end, you then want to be the first one to get to the end. And that is a really, really tricky balancing act.
Very much the case. Well, without further ado, let's head on probably what's going to be one of the fastest laps around this circuit. Let's go on a hot lap here at Kyalami. Kyalami in the Zulu native language means my home. We're on board the Lexus RCF GT3 heading through the kink before the run down to the tight left-hander here at Crowthorne, down from 240 in 5th to first gear at 80 kph on the apex, then a slight elevation change up the hill through the Juxcase sweep going up into third gear before the 90 left here at barbecue, down to second gear, 120 kph on the apex, allowing the Lexus to drift to the right hand side to carry the momentum exiting the corner. All the way across to the left now before turning in and committing to the right hand sweeper at sunset, which feels like it goes on for quite a long time, up to fourth before hitting the brakes again, down into second, 110 kph through the apex through of Clubhouse Bend, before we get the real sense of undulations here at Kyalami, down into the S's, through the left and then through the right, bouncing off the rev limiter before snatching fourth gear as you head up to the left hand hairpin at Loikop, all the way back down from fourth to first gear, one of the slowest corners on this circuit before the roller coaster ride that is Mineshaft, pulling third, pulling fourth, using consistency and commitment through the apex at fifth gear at 220 kilometers an hour before the heavy braking zone down into the right hander here at the Crocodiles, allowing the car to go to the left hand side before taking the next right hander here at Cheetah. Don't take too much curve on the right before going back to the left and then swinging the car back on the approach into Ingwe, the final corner here, and that on the Lexus RCF GT3 is a hot lap here at Kyalami. Qualifying now officially underway here at Kyalami, and what's more, the track temperature is something else the drivers are going to have to factor in here, Andy, because it's 33 air temperature, 43 degrees track temperature. These tyres are going to be put through the ringer over this qualifying session and the race, no doubt.
Yeah, definitely, because as I think we've touched upon, it's not just fuel that they have to manage, but tyres as well. Just 2 tyre sets to last them a practice session, a qualifying session, and an 80-minute race. Now, the tyres will do an 80-minute race, but they'll be hanging on towards the end of it. But then when you throw in the qualifying session and the practice as well, that is a lot of mileage to expect this rubber to deal with. It has to be said, the practice session that was offered up to the drivers, though, wasn't terribly popular, was it? I think most of them have been out practicing on their own beforehand and elected not to use one of those valuable tyre sets through the practice session earlier on. Those tyres, though, could come in handy, couldn't they? Because you are still allowed to pit. It is well within the rules for you to head into the pit lane and put fresh tyres on. You can't refuel, but you can put fresh tyres on, and some of the drivers might be looking to try and do that later on, but not necessarily, Alex, for the reasons you might think.
Yeah, especially when the fact that you can have 30 minutes of hardly burning any fuel off in that fuel tank during those pit stops. So not only could those drivers potentially put on a new fresh set of boots on these cars, then they can also maybe even switch off the engine, and then as the car jumps down off the air jacks, fire the vehicle back into life and get going again. So quite a few familiar names and faces here as well. Luke Whitehead, currently one of the drivers from the Sprint Cup, which makes its return next Thursday, actually a week today, for the 4th round out of 6 at the Hungaroring, amongst others. Lukas Kreutzer I've seen up there as well, to name but just a few. Samir Foch as well. A lot of drivers have decided to go for the Bentley because of the massive fuel capacity this car has. And one of the other things here, Andy, we haven't mentioned this yet, but we're now going to mention it at this particular moment in time, the term lift and coast. And there's certain areas on this circuit, particularly coming down from the left-hand hairpin at Loikop, going through into Mineshaft. It's a roller coaster ride, but then if you're lifting and coasting, it's going to be a completely different proposition when you're trying to save fuel, and that could really come into it as well.
Yeah, definitely, and that is a real art form, isn't it? Professional racing drivers, you can stick them in a car and tell them to go as quickly as possible, and they will race the stopwatch and beat it 9 times out of 10. But when you tell them they've got to go quickly, and they've got to save fuel, and they've got to mind the tyres, that actually becomes really difficult to do. And it is that lifting and coasting that is the most popular way of doing it. It basically means that you lift off the accelerator long before you get to the corner. Of course, every second that you're off the throttle, you're not using any fuel, and then you try and judge it. So you do minimal braking for the corners, you carry as much of that momentum through the turn and then nice and gentle on the throttle coming out again. But to do that without dropping a huge amount of time can be really tricky. And you mentioned there we've got a competitive field, lots of quick drivers, lots of drivers that will be running at about the same sort of pace. And if you're in a big long train of cars, in the early part of the race especially, you don't really want to be lifting too early, because it's a prime opportunity, isn't it, for the car behind to drive straight past you. So it's a real art form to do that without losing too much time.
Yep, there's Leon Otaki from Unicorns of Love in the number 54 Audi, currently top in qualifying with just under 14 minutes and 50 seconds to go. And then briefly behind in Jordan Soanes now in this. So that makes it an Audi 1.2, the 5.2 litre V10 naturally aspirated mid-mounted engine that produces around about 500, or just a shade over 550 brake horsepower, as Valentin Barrier in the number 72 now goes top of the timesheets. Bastian Richter in the wonderfully liveried Aston Martin V8 Vantage, the number 14, also with the Unicorns of Love squad. And it seems like there's a few cheers going in there. Obviously, the official Unicorn of Love sim racing YouTube channel has started to get into a bit of cheering. But Valentin Barrier with just over 14 minutes to go, a 1 minute 41.043. Leon Otaki in second. Then it's Jordan Soanes in the number 23 Audi. He rounds out the top three ahead of Timo Berkel. So that's three Audis in the top five. So a Bentley on pole with Barrier, and Bastian Richter now makes it an Aston Martin in the top five. But Darren King in the number 38 Nissan up into P6 ahead of Daniel Jose Georges, Giorgio Giovanni Migazzi, Mika Wojcik, and then also Mateusz Kadziela rounding out the top 10, all covered by just over 8.5 tenths of a second. There's Gergely Kunsabo in these team names always come out brilliantly. Minimum Effort Racing Team, absolutely textbook for tonight with the economy challenge here on the sim grid. But you can just see that in qualifying here, Randy, qualifying is going to be key. But the biggest thing is that you could be at the front of the grid and you could still have dramas, as you mentioned earlier, in the last 10 minutes of the race.
Yeah, I mean, it's still important to be somewhere near the sharp end, I think, because you're always going to burn more fuel if you have to start overtaking people. And so if you start qualifying outside the top 10, you have to assume that some of the cars ahead of you on the grid will also be able to make it to the end on fuel. So you're going to have to catch them and then pass them. And to do that, you end up burning more fuel, which means you won't make it to the end. So you want to be somewhere near the front. But I don't know if you want to be at the very front of the queue. If I were, and bear in mind I'm a commentator, not a sim racer, but in my uneducated opinion, I think you want to be sort of inside the top 5, but not right at the front of the queue, because that way you can run in the slipstream, you can save a bit of fuel that way, remember, you can manage your tyres as long as you're happy to stay in line. Of course, when you start jockeying for position, you are going to burn your tyres up more quickly too. And just play the waiting game. Stay in touch with the leaders, but you don't necessarily want to be the leader, because then you can't save fuel in the slipstream.
Yep. And to be honest with you, the higher you actually start, the less track distance. Very good point made by Michael Hamlet. As always, Michael Hamlet providing us with some great... I think at the end of the day, he's put out a very, very good point, and we're going to share that with you people at home, is the fact that the higher up the grid you start, the less you've actually got to drive. So that could be, when that car starts sipping on fumes, like, with 78, 79 minutes to go, it's going to be rather interesting. But in the meantime, Bastian Richter is leading in terms of pole position. Now that's definitely not what you want to do there, Daniel Jose Georges in the Ferrari. That was definitely not a smooth operator. That was a spinning operator right there and then, as Luke Whitehead goes P8 in the Bentley. Jaroslav Honzik, Jardier back with us, running the Bentley team motorsport colours, with also... nice little touch there, Jardier, with the South African national flag on both door panels. So we do like that there, considering where we are. And at the moment, the top 10 very, very closely packed. Honzik rounding out the top 10, covered by just over 0.69 of a second. And it's Migazzi, Wojcik, Naj, Kadziela, Muirhead, Alexander Rubb rounds out the top 16. The top 16, Andy. rounded out by a second. And to be completely honest, we've got 45 drivers looking to best the economy challenge as we're nearly halfway through qualifying. This is, qualifying's one thing, racing is completely another different thing altogether. You and I both know that from our relevant real-life commentary experience. But here in the sim racing world, they've had this gauntlet thrown at them, and it's about who deals with it the best. And we could see people, there's no mandatory pit stops, but people could still use those pit stops to mitigate the amount of fuel that they use. I mean, especially if they went, well, I've used one set of tyres in practice and the one in quali. I'm going to start with that set, and maybe probably 45 minutes, half an hour to go, I'll put those fresh boots on. It'll give me an extra 30 seconds of fuel saving in the pit lane.
Well, yes, and we might even get into that really strange territory where drivers are voluntarily giving up laps so that they have to complete less distance. I know from personal experience, if I've messed up my fuel calculation in a 60-minute online race, I've actually been quite grateful to be a lap down by the end. To be honest, I'm quite grateful if it's only one lap down by the end. But if I am off the lead lap, it means that I have then less laps to complete, and of course, less fuel that has to be used. So we might even see people go into the pit lane not just to change tyres, but as you said, to maybe spend a lap in the pit lane and just hope that everyone that comes past and laps you runs out of fuel at the end. And you've got to make all of these calculations, Alex, whilst you're driving around, potentially inches away from the cars around you, around what is a very difficult circuit. Kyalami is a challenging circuit. It's easy to make a mistake, and it really punishes you if you do make a mistake. There are gravel traps, tyre walls, concrete walls waiting to greet you if you get it wrong. And when you're sat there trying to make all of these quite complex fuel calculations, it's even easier to make that mistake. There's a reason that professional racing teams hire whole groups of people to work out the strategy mid-race so that the drivers themselves don't have to make those calculations and distract themselves from the important and rather tricky job of driving the car.
Yeah, very much the case there, Andy, as Jaroslav Honzik goes provisional pole by 18 thousandths of a second. So the number 39 Bentley with a 1 minute 40.929. Bastien Richter rounds out the top two, 18 thousandths adrift. Then it's Valentin Barrier, so that's Crew and Gaydon's finest in the top three. So we've got two Bentleys. It's the Bentley sandwich with the Aston Martin meat in the middle. There's Carlos Zoloni in the 909 Dynamis Esports car, running out the top 24 positions. And the top 24 covered by just a shade under 1.2 seconds. Harry Spears in the 455. He's one of the of several Nissans here as an Aston pulls to the right-hand side. But still, 34 drivers covered by 1.8 seconds in this qualifying session. We're coming down to the last 7 minutes or so. And, I mean, you know, one of the other things that you said about slipstream, if you get 4 or 5 cars going literally line astern down mineshaft, or going through from Ingwe, which is the final corner on the circuit, all the way down through the kink and into Crowthorne, which is effectively the de facto turn one here, Andy, there's going to be a lot of lifting and coasting, but also that momentum is going to help them because they won't have to push so aggressively on the throttle. They'll have that little bit in reserve, and they may not even need to use that if they want to do a slipstream overtake without having to be fully committed with full throttle on the accelerator.
Yeah, I mean, it's all going to be a balancing act, isn't it? Because you want to be lifting and you want to be saving fuel, but of course, running in the dirty air can actually work your tyres harder as well. Although I personally don't make a huge, I wouldn't make a huge deal of tyre wear, because I don't think they're going to really be pushing the cars hard enough that tyre wear is going to make a massive difference. You know, they're not going to be really leaning on the rubber into the final 10 or 15 minutes. So yeah, I do think they'd be happier to be in the middle of the pack, or at least in a pack of cars, chasing people down using that slipstream, than they would be out in front. One interesting thing I've noticed, Alex, is that we mentioned there are, 14 or 15 of these beautiful Bentley Continental GT3s on the grid. only 3 of them in the top 10, so whilst the Bentley should be good on fuel, it doesn't appear, does it, to have the outright pace. Now, granted, 2 of those 3 are in the top 3 positions, but considering it's the most popular car on the grid by far, I did think we'd see a few more of them at the pointy end.
Yeah, I think in some respects I can see the strategy here from Jaroslav Honzik, whereby you're at the front of the field, you can control your pace, and also that might actually in some ways indirectly control the pace of the field. I mean, at the moment with just over 5 minutes to go, Honzik is on provisional pole, Bastien Richter alongside, Valentin Barrier in third. Then it's a pair of Audis with Leon Otocki and Jordan Soanes. Then we've got Lukas Kreuzer, another well-known name within these racing parts, predominantly in split ones. He rounds out the top 6, so a Porsche makes it into the top 6. Then we've got another Audi with the 116 of Timo Berkel, and then Harry Spears has made it up to P8 in the 455 Nissan, but that's quickly changed with Renato Dornelles in the number 3 Bentley. So the Bentleys are starting to creep up the order. And I'm just looking that you've got Daniel Jose Georges, who we saw being the spinning operator, not the smooth operator earlier on. He rounds out the top 10, so the highest placed Ferrari. And also Darren King, he's up into P11 ahead of Luke Whitehead, who's in a Bentley rather than the Ferrari we see him in the Sprint Cup. Patrick Lipka makes it another Ferrari, rounding out the top 13, covered by just over 5.5 tenths as Samuel Hatz there. Goes P5 in the Racing Line Motorsport Ferrari. There's Jordan Soanes. I like that. We saw minimum effort racing team from Gergely Consabo. Now we've got reverse sandbag racing from Jordan Soanes. I mean, these team names for tonight's economy challenge, absolutely brilliant. As Jordan Soanes goes into P4 with a 1 minute 41.103. Jonas van Droyten in the Garage 991 powered by Renvelt 995 Aston Martin. He's rounding out the top 26. And as always, Andy, despite it being an economy challenge for an 80-minute free-for-all here, well, economy free-for-all here at Kyalami, still rather competitive, because I've just looked that the top 37 drivers, rounded out by David Dancer, who said on the YouTube chat earlier, watch me come to a stop 2 laps before the end. They are covered by just under 1 3/4 seconds.
It's all very tight, isn't it? But there is a real mix of the amount of laps that have been completed by some of them. Renato Dornelles has just improved again now, hasn't he, into 6th position now, gets himself back ahead of Samuel Ratz in the Ferrari. But we've got some drivers that have done literally 3 laps. Timo Berkel is one in the Audi, 9th quickest at the moment. Only done 3 laps in the session, and yet Bastien Richter, who is 2nd quickest at the moment, has done 7, so that's an extra 4 laps on his tyres. If these are the tyres that he's going to start the race on, that could be a pretty significant disadvantage. Of course, he may have saved a set of tyres, though, by not going out in practice. That was the sensible thing to do, wasn't it? Not go out in practice. You can bag that fresh set of tyres then and just dedicate them to running in qualifying, so that then come the race you can stick another new set on as well. Marius Golombek there goes 37th, not the fastest lap that we've seen so far tonight, but that was an improvement of 3 positions. But you're right, Alex, very, very tight indeed. The top 3 drivers at the moment are covered by less than 1/10 of a second, so depending on how hard they're comfortable with running, once we go racing, we could be in for a pretty tasty battle at the sharp end.
Very much the case, and I think it would be more than 75 thousandths of a second between the top 3 at the end of this race, Andy. As you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, there is Giardier's stream, Jaroslav Honzik, currently sitting in pit lane. Well, he's literally just you can see by what we're seeing on the timing, and also with what he's seeing, there's a little bit of a delay there, but the good thing is, as there is Sebastian Handler, again, one of the well-known members of Team Cake, as always, the likes of Josie Austin and all the crew there as well. I'm sure that they'll be cheering Sebastian on. There's Jordan Burrows. Oh, God, the team names just come in thick and fast. Wrong Car Racing. And is it the right choice? Is it the wrong choice? Well, we've got a minute of qualifying still to go, and then we've got an 80-minute race around here at Kyalami where they've got to really manage the fuel, watch for the fuel maps as well.
Yes, well, everyone seems to think it's the right car, don't they? But it's certainly not the quickest. 39th at the moment for that particular Bentley. Sebastian Handler is on another lap, though, just heading up now through the Crocodiles into Cheetah. This circuit definitely has the best corner names, I think, of any racetrack in the world. Giorgio Giovanni Migazzi there has just gone 6th quickest now, except that now becomes 7th because we've got Black Goldsaw who has gone into 4th place. So you remember about 5 minutes ago, Alex, I was complaining we didn't have enough Bentleys at the front. Well, now 3 of the top 4 positions are Bentleys, and it's British cars locking out the front 2 rows because the interloper is still Bastian Richter in the Aston Martin. So the Bentleys perhaps were just taking a bit longer to get up to speed. Having said that, that was Goldsaw's 3rd lap of the session, so possibly his first flying lap of the session, and he's gone straight to the top. So are we seeing a little bit of sandbagging here and a few drivers not wanting to show their hand until the very end?
Well, here's Patrick Nage in the number 42 Aston Martin, currently rounding out the top 23. As Leon Ortocki goes pole by 42 thousandths on his last flying lap. That was a 1 minute 40.887. And then you look behind, it's Jaroslav Honzik, and then it's Bastian Richter. Christian Lozanov goes 17th at the flag, nearly 6.5 tenths of a second adrift. Pavel Ciesla from Poland, 43rd in the number 13 Bentley. But Leon Ortocki from Unicorns of Love has put it on provisional pole. Jaroslav Honzik second, Bastian Richter. Then you also got Valentin Barrier and Black Goldsaw. That is 3 Bentleys in the top 5 with an Aston Martin and an Audi. You then got a further 2 Audis as Jordan Burrows in the number 185 38th. Marco Bischoff from Germany coming through. Oh, he's absolutely flying through the exit, coming through Mineshaft, then into the right-hander at the Crocodiles. And he's currently 47th at the moment. We've actually got 4 Bentleys in the top 10, courtesy of the number 3 of Renato Dornelles, with Samuel Hatz and Lukas Kreutzer, who's now about to cross the line in the number 1 Porsche. He's the highest qualified Porsche, stays P10. And here comes Marco Bischoff. Where is the number 37 going to factor in? Well, that's really it on the qualifying session. But Leon Ortocki takes pole position. Will it prove to be of his dividends after 80 minutes of racing, Andy? Because, you know, you've got to factor in the likes of Jaroslav Honzik, Black Goldsaw, he put it up into P3 with hardly any laps on the board, did exactly the same amount of laps as Jaroslav Honzik. Then you got Bastian Richter, Valentin Barrier, 6 laps in quali, Jordan Soanes, 8 laps in quali, Migazzi, another 8 laps in qualification. A lot of these drivers took a bit of life out of these tyres, but whether they decided that they use one for practice and then go into qualifying with a new set, because they've still got one. This is their second set to play with. But I think that some of them might have just decided, well, I'm going to err on the side of caution, and I'm going to go with one set through practice and quali. That's 50 minutes. I can then maybe push the other set for another maybe 20, 30 minutes, get into the pits, have a 30-second respite, so to speak, which means no fuel being burnt, put a new set of tyres on it, and just coax that car to the finish line.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, they may not have used any tyres in practice. Some drivers, I'm sure, didn't go out there at all, or maybe just did 1 or 2 laps. So that might well turn out to be a winning strategy as well. But here we can see the grid then. Drivers preparing now, just a few minutes away from the start of what I think is going to be one of the strangest races I've ever commentated on. Qualifying, though, was very, very competitive. So, yeah, I think what we're going to see, and this is all complete prediction because we've never had a race like this before, but I think the first few laps will be fairly frenetic. Everyone will have an idea of where in the queue they want to be, and then once they get into that position, or they settle into whatever spot it is that they end up running in, I think then things might calm down through the middle part of the race. It's going to be that middle chunk where you have to save the fuel. It's no good going off like a bat out of hell at the start and then worrying about fuel in the last 10 minutes. You have to be thinking about fuel save, I'd say, within the first 5 minutes, and then you'll try to hit that number. You'll try to save as much as you think you need to, and then gradually, as we move through the second half of the race, we'll see drivers, you'll probably be able to tell when they've hit the correct fuel number and when they're confident they've got enough fuel, because their lap times will suddenly start to drop and they'll suddenly start looking more aggressive. But I think it's in that sort of, after the first 5-10 minutes, but before the half race distance, that's where things might calm down. and they're really going to try and save all the fuel that they can. You can see if you're starting this far back in the field, I mean, those that are outside the top 15 or 20, they're going to have to try something fairly dynamic here, aren't they, to get themselves into contention.
I think they're either going to have to get out their Harry Potter wand, or they're going to have to pull a rabbit out of the magician's hat this evening, Andy. But yeah, it's going to be rather difficult. The track temperature has remained the same. It's 33 degrees air, 43 degrees track temperature. There is sunshine here in Midrand here in South Africa for what is going to be a rather interesting and new slant that we put here on SimGrid, the Economy Challenge. 80 minutes where the tanks have been filled to bursting point, to capacity on these cars. And also good to see Tobias Grönwald, one of the other drivers from Unicorns of Love, giving his best supports to Leon Otoki and Bastian Richter. So we're going to get the formation lap underway here at Kyalami for the first ever sim racing, the SimGrid Economy Challenge. Don't forget you can follow us on all relevant social medias as well. You can also, if you're watching on YouTube, why not hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and also hit the notification bell. Plenty of content coming up in the next few weeks and months here on the SimGrid. So let's have a look through the grid, shall we? So, for the first ever Economy Challenge here on the SimGrid, I can't really believe, Andy McEwan, I am actually saying those words right about now. But we've got Leon Otoki starting from pole position in the Audi. Then we've got Jaroslav Honzik alongside on the front row. Then it's Black Goldsaw and Bastian Richter. That's row 2 in a Bentley and an Aston Martin. Then it's Bentley versus Audi on row 3 with Valentin Barrier and Jordan Soanes. Giorgio Giovanni Migazzi and Renato Dornelles, that's row 4. Rounding out the top 10 it is Samuel Hatz and Lucas Kreuzer, both in the highest place respectively, Ferrari and Porsche on the grid. Timo Berkel in 11th, ahead of Harry Spears in the Nissan in 12th. Daniel Jose Georges and Jonas van Druyten, that's row 7. Darren King and Luke Whitehead, row 8. Christian Ozanov and Patrick Lipka, that's row 9, completing the top 20. Oh, well, it looks like we've got a certain dark horse that's always favoured by Michael Hamlet, Attila Denks, the Hungarian in the BMW, on the inside of row number 10. And he's got Krzysztof Mazakowski alongside. Patrick Nage and Misha Wojcik, that is row 11. Jan Kaminski and Mateusz Kadziela, that is row number 12, ahead of Marco Bischoff and Felix Zeff. And then we got Matt Muirhead and Alexander Hab, that's row 14, completing the top 30. So Mikołaj Nowicki, and then we've got Sebastian Handler, that is rounding out the top 30. Completing what is going to be 47 cars on this grid. I cannot believe I just said that. We've got Pawe Dominiak, Carlos Zoloni, Nicolo Corato, Hafik Grazel, we've got Gergely Kunsabo, Ryan Hunwa, Samir Foch, Hubert Szymanski, then we've got Jordan Burrows, Marius Golombek, then David Dancer, Wojciech Neuwirth, Declan Bowler, Pavel Ciesla, then we got Filip Witzak, Roberto Ariavi, and then Luca Ziga rounding out the 47 strong grid. And as always, exemplary broadcast direction by Mike Yao, with Michael Hamlet always helping us behind the scenes. And that's just showing not really a true picture, Andy, of what this circuit is going to provide in terms of the different dynamics for tonight's race.
It's a fantastic track, though, isn't it, Kyalami? A bit of a hidden gem, I think, in international motorsport. It hosts quite a lot of national South African racing. The headline act, of course, is the big now SRO organised GT3 race towards the end of the season, which last year, despite having a small grid, was still an absolute thriller. But it really does give the drivers a little bit of everything. It's got these really high-speed sections down the pit straight, down towards Sunset, down through Mineshaft as well, but then these really tight technical corners. The first sequence through Crowthorne up towards Barbecue, that's really low speed, huge undulations as well. So it is a real challenge when you're on the limit. Now, how much of this race they'll spend on the limit, I'm not too sure. It's certainly not the fastest formation lap that I've ever seen here, Alex. Everyone is really hanging around, just trying to save as much fuel as you can, because of course it's not just the 80 minutes of racing where you have to think about fuel save, but you've got to get round to the green flag first.
Well, also, considering the fact going through Loikop, I saw Leon Otaki doing 80 kilometres an hour on the apex of Loikop in 6th gear. That's how crucial this all is. He's done the whole lap, as has Jaroslav Honzik, in 6th gear. This is just how committed these drivers are. And we are, I think this is the longest formation lap. We're not even going through the crocodiles yet. You know what you said about these corner names? I think I've gone to a restaurant and to the local zoo all at the same time because of obviously barbecue, cheetah, and the crocodiles. But
and you've probably done all of that quicker than it's taken them to do this green flag lap as well.
Very true. Very true. But it looks like we're about to get things underway for the first ever SimGrid Economy Challenge here at Kyalami. Air temperature 33 degrees, track temperature 43 degrees. They are not planning, I think, going completely full throttle because the tyres will be well up to temperature. So, ladies and gentlemen, are we ready? Are we steady? It's green for the Economy Challenge, but it's going to be as green as they can make it as Otaki now heads into Crowthorne, and this is at snail's pace considering what we see as Otaki takes the lead. Goldsaw looking to go up the inside of Jardier as it's 3 abreast, going through into the Jux K sweep for the first time. Looked like Bastian Richter was in the middle, Piggy in the middle there in the number 14 Unicorns of Love. Aston Martin going through Barbecue, and just look at that train, Andy. This is the Economy Challenge SimGrid train. I mean, forget Jarno Trulli. And a good point by Cami Stokes. She said this will be like 1982 in Monte Carlo with everyone running out of fuel again. Oh, goodness me. Don't jinx it, but we've had a bit of a moment there. I think that was Jardier going through into Clubhouse, and that Bentley wasn't exactly on the tarmac with all 4 wheels.
No, and on the inset there was a bit more of that going on. Harry Spears was tagged sideways, I think, or was involved in a bit of contact, possibly with the 47, I think it was, wasn't it, of Pavel Dominiak, who got, he got tagged sideways. Spears involved too. So already a little bit of contact there on the midfield, because of course, whilst those at the front of the pack are quite happy to say, no, after you, in the midfield, there is a bit of a rush here, isn't there, to get to the front. You need to stay in touch with this lead pack. And isn't this exactly what I said would happen? There'd be a bit of chaos in the opening lap as everyone tried to get in position. And now they all seem quite happy to follow each other. Having said that, there are cars running wide in the background there. That was one of the Aston Martins. Might have been Richter, I think, wasn't it, in the 14 that ran wide. Clipped that curve going through the 15th corner at the second of the Crocodiles. And that, Alex, is a lap. And we already, have a 5-car breakaway.
Yeah, very much the case. Leon Otaki leading the way. Jaroslav Honzik, Black Goldsaw. Then we got Jordan Soanes and Valentin Barrier. And then not too far behind them, you're going to have the likes of Dornells in the number 3, Giovanni Migazzi in the second highest placed Audi in 7th place, Bastian Richter in the number 14 Aston Martin. Then you've got Ratz in the number 808. This is probably, I mean, you can now see that the 185 of Jordan Burroughs is right down at the back of the field. And in many respects here, Mr. McEwan, I think that might not be such a bad strategy after all, because the thing is that you don't need to go... Okay, if you're at the front of the field like Leon Otaki is at the moment, with Honzik, Goldsaw, I mean, the thing is that Audi is cutting so much into the area in front. It's opening that pocket for Honzik and Goldsaw, but then you've got Soanes, you've got Barrier now being... he's got Dornells up the inside. Now, this is where they're going to do the most lifting and coasting, down into mineshaft. But the thing is that when you're actually lifting and coasting, the thing is that if you put the power down too heavy when you're lifting and coasting, you can actually spool up the rear tyres and cause that car to go sideways and off the track.
Yeah, you've got to do it gently, haven't you? It's not just about getting off the throttle, right, but getting back onto it correctly. Saw a really good example of lifting and coasting there from Jordan Soanes. He dropped way, way back from Black Goldsaw as they went down the mine shaft and then gained it all back again in the braking zone because, of course, you can brake so much later. You're going slower, so you can leave your braking to the last second and regain all of the lost time. So I think that's Jordan Soanes really showing his lift and coast prowess there. There's going to be contact into turn one. Yes, and Jordan Soanes goes around. I do not believe it. What was I just saying about him excelling seemingly at this fuel-saving malarkey? And Jordan Soanes got tapped into a spin. Now, was that Valentin Barrier, I think, who got into it? It was one of the... It was either Barrier or Dornell's. I didn't see which Bentley it was.
Yeah.
But poor old Jordan Soanes. See, this is the thing. You lift on coast in the straight, and it means the car behind just gets tempted, don't they, into making that move.
Well, it looked like it was Valentin Barrier because Dornell's is actually in the very, very plain white Bentley. And I understand that there's been a massive incident actually going through Cheetah. There is one car already in the pits, and it looks to be that, well, you've got Samir Foch is not on this circuit anymore. Felix Zeff in the 243. That's one of the multiple Bentleys on this circuit. So, yeah, I think a very good point by one of, who was it? I'm just looking there. Cosmin on there saying, and there it is, coasting into the Audi. Well, that was eloquently put when it came to Barrier and Soanes. Unfortunately, coming into contact there, going through into Crowthorns. But, you know, the lap times we're seeing, okay, we had 1 minute 40s, as we're going to go to a replay now, and this is from a little bit further back, and that is the 777. That's Daniel Jose Georges. Oh, and he gets turned around. Then gets another whack for his troubles. And that was the 66 of Wojcik that came through as well. So it was a case of 4 going into 1, did not go, and then Daniel Jose Georges was like, I'm the one that's getting spat out here.
Yeah, I saw Luke Whitehead was sideways in the middle of all of that too, so that caught out quite a lot of the midfield starters, and that's another reason that you don't really want to be starting that deep in the field, because you are always prone then, aren't you, to these sort of early issues. So what does this leave us then? Well, it leaves us with still the Audi in front of Leon Attoki. Another replay here. This is going down into the Crocodiles on, I think, lap 1, and this, I think we saw on the inset, there was some contact here. There's a McLaren going very slowly, and look at people well offline, just coasting up the hill, trying their best to stay out of people's way, and eventually contact was inevitable, and it's the 185 of Jordan Burrows that got tapped sideways there as they went through the Crocodiles. Right, battle for the lead is on now, and this is Black Goldsaw going for second place round the outside of Jaroslav Honchik. Is he going to make it stick? I don't think Jaroslav's going to fight it. No, he backs out of it. Says, look, if you really want second place that badly, then at this early stage I'm prepared to let you have it. But is Goldsaw going to go for the lead now? He has a look to the inside of Attoki, didn't make it stick. I wonder if Leon Attoki is going to be happy to give up the lead here and run behind that big Bentley to try and save some fuel.
Yeah, well, they're coming up to one of the back markers, I think, just up ahead. And that looks to be Felix Zeff in, well, there's one Bentley up ahead of them. You've also got Gergely Kunsabo. That's 46 runners and riders out of the 47 that started this race, as Black Goldsaw looking for his opportunity. And again, going through the kink and into Crowthorns, another perfect example. Let's head to another replay. Now, this is from earlier on. You can see that there's a few Bentleys and Ferraris and even a... Oh, now that was one of the Porsches. I think that was Gollenbeck that went into the side of 243. That's Felix Zeff, and then Zeff got an absolute punt and a half in the right rear, and that sent him round. I think there was a 540 there, not a 1080, like I was possibly thinking that was going to be. But Felix Zeff definitely on the receiving end. But it has been pretty straightforward at the front of the field. But Attoki doing the right thing. I think he's hanging on, but he's not, as you said, Andy, he's not going to fight, because Black Goldsaw wants to get past and start controlling things. Because if he can control the pace here at Kyalami, it might give him a bit of an advantage. But don't try and go around the outside of Loikot to get the run going through the mine shaft, please. Thank you very much.
Well, he got second place doing that a lap ago, so I thought he'd try and hedge his bets again. But yeah, the Audi came off the corner far too well. This is a good overtaking opportunity, though. He tried it here a lap ago. But no, Otoki is not happy to give him this lead, is he? So clearly, Otoki wants to, as you said, control the pace from the front. There are two ways of going about this in my eyes. You either save the fuel now and sit in the pack and try and do all the things we've said. You lift and coast, you use the slipstream, you just try and rely on this slightly easier pace in the early stages in the middle of the pack to save the fuel. Or you do what I think Black Goldsaw's trying to do. You get the lead, you disappear off into the distance, you burn all of the fuel, and then you worry about it later. At least then you've got the track position, and if you know you've got a 10 or 15 second lead going into the last 20 minutes, you know what sort of a gap you have to play with. You could very easily save too much fuel here in the early stages, and actually, at the end of the race, think, oh, I could have probably started pushing a bit earlier and a bit harder. So maybe that's what Goldsaw's trying to do here. Get the lead, escape, and then worry about the fuel later.
Well, one person that might not be... Well, there goes Black Goldsaw going through. That's into Sunset. That's a great opportunistic move there. Up the inside, but they're going to go up the incline now into Clubhouse. So that means Otoki gets back the inside line. And Black Goldsaw nearly comes to door panel blows with Otoki. But Goldsaw now takes the lead with just under 10 minutes of this 80-minute economy run here at Kyalami. But I've just noticed that Giorgio... you know what's really funny though? Giorgio Giovanni Magazzi has just put in the fastest lap of anybody. That's something strange to say during an economy run, isn't it? 1 minute 43.179. I think, I mean, that's the guy in 5th place. So as you can now see, the Valentin Barrier is tumbling down the order. But it might not be to his detriment here. I mean, obviously, yeah, there was the contact between him and Jordan Soanes, who's, 4 places behind at the moment on the road. And there you can see Soanes coming through the shot as they head into the Crocodiles. But being in 13th or 14th or being towards the bottom part of the top 20, if you're in a train like this, is going to really help you because you're not the one that's punching that air in that hole into that dirty air. Because you've got the 995, he just gets a turnaround there, and that causes absolute carnage. And I think Jordan Soanes, again, was an unwilling participant for the second incident in just under 11 minutes. Oh my goodness me! And that was Patrick Nage that did the turning around on Jonas van Druyten, who I think, by the skin of his virtual Nomex, got away with that one.
I'll tell you what's happening here. You don't just lift and coast in a straight line. You try and coast into and through the corners. You don't want to hit the brakes unless you absolutely have to. And I think that closing speed and the fact that not everyone is doing it to quite the same extent, it's just leading to a lot of these clumsy accidents, isn't it? Where they're sort of meeting in the middle. One car seems to carry way too much speed into the corner, but actually they're not. It's just they're trying to coast through the corner and try to be as gentle on the throttle and brake applications as possible, but that's all for naught when you then start running into people and getting spun around. So you've got to be careful, and this is maybe, again, an argument to say that it's safer to be out in front. Here you'll see what I mean. So they're coming down through the Crocodiles then, back up the hill they go, and look at the way that it's the third car in line, isn't it? Just carries, the second car in line just carries more speed into the corner than the car ahead is, because you're just trying to coast through the turn and keep the average speed as high as possible. It didn't really work out on that occasion, and so maybe there is an argument to say that being in front in clean air is the safer place to be.
Yeah, very much the case. As I said, Jordan Soanes again. Yeah, well, the unfortunate thing is that Samir Foch, on his internet died right before the formation lap, so it locked the server was directly locked as a result of it. So that's a real shame for Samir Foch. So we still have, according to our timing, that there are still 46 drivers. There's Marco Bischoff, and he qualified a bit further down the order. But one of the interesting things that I'm very, because here, if you were in map 1, for instance, here, Andy, that's the full beans on the car. That's everything's opened up to volume number 11. And could that be the case where some drivers are sticking to map 1 and I think one of them will be the current leader, Black Goldsaw. If he's running it, and if he's going for it, if he's going to push that initial pace, as there goes Jaroslav Honzik on the inside of Leon Otoki. Now that is for second place on the road, as Goldsaw now closing on Felix F, as Otoki looks to fire it back up the inside through into the Crocodiles, looks to the right, looks to the left, thinks better of it, and here comes Dornell's right up his back bumper. But you know, if the Bentleys are burning off so much fuel, that could be a bit of a detriment. Like you said, you know, get the initial pace out of the way and then worry about it later, and that could be quite a very interesting proposition, because you could have, like, say, I'm looking at Otoki's laps. He's just done a 1:43.9. We're going to go to a brief replay here. Now, this is a repeat of what happened. So there's Jordan Soanes, just gets caught out, had nowhere to go, and it was straight into the side of Majkowski in the 787 Nissan. Jordan Soanes just has had no luck at all in this race, and at the moment he's not even factoring into the top 20. I think he's way down the order, if memory serves me correctly.
Yeah, he's towards the back of the top 30, I think, isn't he? Back marker there, getting out of the way of the second placed Bentley, that of Jaroslav Honzik. But look at the way that Black Goldsaw he's bolted, hasn't he? Now he's 1.8 seconds up the road. So yeah, I think he's decided it's worth just going for it now. Get the gap, let everyone else trip over each other, and then maybe you can deal with the fuel saving, but under a little bit less pressure. It's very hard to... Giorgio Giovanni Magazzi was carrying a lot more speed into the corner there than Renato Dornell's was in front of him. That nearly got a bit tasty. But yeah, as I said at the start of the race, it's hard to do all of these calculations when you're also jockeying for position with a pack of other cars. So Black Goldsaw, I think, has decided, forget about that, I'm just going to go, build a gap, and then when I've got a bit more time to think about it later, then I'll start saving fuel. If you're really clever about this, you'll have worked out before the race that you have to do, you know, a certain number of laps at a reduced pace in order to save the required amount of fuel. Doesn't really matter when you do that. You can do that in the first 10 minutes, or you can do it in the last 10 minutes, or in the middle 10 minutes. But if you've worked out that it's 10 or 15 minutes that you really have to back off to save the fuel, why do it at the start? Why not build a gap and deal with it later? I think that's what Goldsaw's doing.
Well, he would do if Jaroslav Honzik would let him get away with it, as Lukas Kreutzer looking up the inside of Samuel Ratz, and that's going through Crowthorne, up into the right-hander, up the hill through the Jukes K sweep, and then into the right-hander here at Barbecue. I mean, Jardier and Black Goldsaw, they are literally concurrently on this, round about the same lap times. Jardier a high 1 minute 42.5. Black Goldsaw a mid 1:42.6, and the gap between them is about 1.5 seconds. As Lukas Kreutzer, that Porsche, looking rather well settled in the number 1 from Sidemax Motorworks, and Luke Whitehead in the number 7 Bentley, not too far behind. Well, he's about 3.7 seconds adrift. Darren King rounds out the top 10 as we go on board with Marco Bischoff. So you got Timo Berkel, and there is one of the Nissans that looks to be possibly that's Witzak in the 619, as they're now heading their way up through the S's and then through into the left-hand hairpin, and that is not a battle for position. So Witzak has now had a lap put down on him as we fast approach the conclusion of can't believe it. This feels like the slowest 20 minutes I've ever commentated here on SimGrid, but it's been one of the most interesting, as Jordan Burrows now rounds out the top 37, and he's got Szymanski just behind him in the number 22 Nissan. But still, I mean, you can now, I mean, looking at the timing now, Jaroslav Honzik here, Andy, has just put in a 1 minute 42.117. He's gone purple in sectors 2 and 3, and so the fact that Black Goldsaw is going to be struck at very, very shortly, even with this being an economy challenge.
Yeah, I mean, on the whole, the pace is starting to improve, isn't it? We're seeing more and more personal best lap times and sectors coming in. So looks like maybe some of them have, as I said, decided that they've done a bit of fuel saving and now they're going to go racing, because it's all well and good saving all of this fuel to get to the end, but you need to be going fast enough to win the race as well. So quite a lot of quick drivers we've seen in trouble, either through contact or just really backing off to save fuel in the early stages, and now they are all deciding, I think, to get a bit of a wriggle on. The gap at the front continues to come down though, because as you said, Jaroslav Honchik is absolutely flying, purple second and third sector last time, so he's got the lead gap down now to just over 1 second. Sebastian Handler here in the midfield though rather has his hands full, doesn't he, here in the Team Cake entered Bentley. Always been a fan of Bentleys, but this has immediately become my favourite of them, because Team Cake is the greatest team name I've ever seen, and I won't hear anything other than that. He's challenging the BMW of Kaminsky as they go up the hill into the double left-hander, and then they drop back downhill again towards the mine shaft. Not much fuel saving going on here though, is it? I think this is a real fight for track position.
Yeah, track temperature has now increased to 44 degrees Celsius as we fast approach the last, well, we're within the final 60 seconds of the first 20 minutes completed, so nearly a quarter of this race down at the moment. The gap has gone down between Black Goldsaw and Jaroslav Honchik as Sebastian Handler trying to battle away with Jonas van Druyten and Jan Kaminsky as they go through Ingwe, the final corner on the circuit here at Kyalami, and just behind is the very, very bright pink Nissan of Harry Spears in the 455. We go on board with the front splitter cam, and we now have our first penalty issued. There is a drive-through penalty for Harry Spears for avoidable contact on lap 1 with the number 1 of Lukas Kreutzer, who's currently made his way up into 7th position. So Harry Spears will have to serve his drive-through penalty within the next couple of laps or so. That will mean he'll get a bit of a... I mean, forget about the fact it's a drive-through. Yeah, the thing is, he'll be at a 50 km/h speed zone going through that pit lane as Kaminsky runs very, very wide and nearly gives the opportunity for Team Cake Sebastian Handler to get through for what is 17th position. But that literally, getting that drive-through, it's a bit of a... I wish that hadn't happened. And then Spears is going to be laughing all the way to the fuel saving bank, isn't he?
Well, we did toy with the idea, didn't we, off air before we went live, that some drivers might deliberately try and get themselves a penalty so that they had to come in and serve a drive-through or a stop-go so that they didn't have to use as much fuel. I mean, especially a stop-go penalty or something when you're literally stationary for 30 seconds or so. If you then go down a lap, that is, as I said, one fewer lap that you have to complete. So it's not necessarily the end of the world. You have to imagine, though, that some of these drivers will be able to just make the fuel save work, and they will probably be able to get to the end even with a decent pace. But as we see Spears there in the background diving for the pit lane, and he'll actually probably get a sense of relief to just lift off the throttle, stick the pit lane limiter on, and hear those revs die away for a glorious 20 or 30 seconds or so.
Yeah, that Nissan will be idling like a good one with that 3.8 litre twin-turbo V6 engine, as we've now got that Jardier has got past Black Goldsaw, and it's not much between them. And looking at the lap times, on the previous lap it was a 1 minute 42.588 for Goldsaw, and then Honchik a 142.462. So this is where things are going to get rather interesting, the gap between the two Bentleys. And one of the
interesting
things, I'm now looking on Jardier's stream to see.
Yeah, I'm doing exactly the same thing.
What map is that guy running on is the biggest question, because obviously, dependent if you're on map 1, that's basically full guns blazing. So effectively, I think if they're running at the 142s, you can now see ABS is set at 3. Okay, throttle. He's on traction control 1 out of 8, and now he's actually on map 4 out of 8. So he's on map 4 rather than sort of like being on the full guns blazing. So even with being halfway through those fuel map settings on that Bentley, to still do a 143.6 is pretty good. But there's been a few comments in the chat saying that there's a lot of the drivers that are normally racing at 11 tenths and they sort of got caught out by this challenge. I very much agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's as I said, it's an art form to try and save fuel whilst going quickly, and it is relevant as well. I saw a few people in the stream asking, well, what's the point of all of this? Well, if you are a professional racing driver, be that real world or sim, at some point in your career, you'll be asked to save fuel, especially if it's GT endurance racing that is your speciality. So there is some real relevance to all of this, and it is difficult to do. One interesting thing I saw there, actually, as we were riding on board, is that on Jardier's stream, it said he had about 32 laps of fuel. Now, that's never 100% accurate, I realise, but 32 laps is going to take you about 53, 54 minutes, I think, at the pace they're running. That ain't enough, because at the time I looked, there were 57 minutes to go. So he's definitely got some fuel to save, and this reflects, doesn't it, on the conversation we've been having, that the Bentleys are going very, very quickly. It's about 2.3, 2.35 litres a lap is how they calculate it. And I know from my time on ACC, which is relatively limited still, Alex, but I know that fuel lap counter is usually pretty much on the money. Certainly, I don't think it's going to be 3 or 4 laps out, which is what he needs to hope it is.
Yep, and it looks like we've got another driver with a drive-through penalty, as Sebastian Handler has got past Jan Kaminski in the meantime, heading through into the Crocodiles. It is the 911 that has just been given a penalty by Race Control, and that is Marius Gollenbeck that is up into 23rd position, and that was for avoidable contact on lap 2. So just over 55 minutes remain in this economy challenge here on the sim grid. So Jaroslav Honzik leading the way, but from Black Gold Saw in the 88 Bentley. So it's a crew 1-2 at the moment, covered by just over half a second. Leon Otoki, our pole sitter, is now 1.5 seconds behind. Now the Audi is starting to gather pace, Andy. Honzik and Black Gold Saw both were in the 143 twos or threes. But Otoki now running in the 142 sevens, and look how close he is now as they come through Loikop and down into Mineshaft, with Dornell's not too far behind.
As soon as anyone gets the lead in this race, they immediately slow down by a second or so, don't they? Goldsaw got the lead, then slowed down, then Honzik caught him, passed him, and slowed down. And now Otoki, as you said, is going nearly a second a lap quicker than them. On this lap, he's going to close right in, and he's bringing with him Renato Dornell's in the Bentley. Then you get the first real gap of about 5 seconds or so back to Giorgio Giovanni Magazzi in the next of the Audis. But it's a real strange dynamic to this race, isn't it? Normally, when we see someone break out into the race lead, they immediately start to build a gap. But it's quite hard, isn't it, to gauge how fast you should be going when you're the first car in the pack. Here's another lead change incoming as Black Goldsaw takes his turn to go out in front. Bit of Bentley teamwork here, do you think? You lead for a couple of laps, I'll save some fuel, then I'll lead for a couple of laps, let you save some? Or is this just genuine racing and trying to scramble to find the best place in line?
I think it's that old adage, to me, to you, to me, to you sort of thing. But it has really been a case that the pendulum swings one way, then it swings the other. We don't know where it's going to land. Is it going to stay in the middle, so like with about 10 minutes to go? Yeah, I think you're right there. I think also the fact is that now that Otoki and Renato Dornell's are coming into this, Valentin Barrier's now got a drive-through penalty. So the number 72, that's not a good sign for him. I mean, Valentin Barrier and Jaroslav Honzik currently in Sprint Cup Season 3 running in the Audi. They're running in the top 5 of the championship at the moment, but Valentin Barrier gets a drive-through penalty. So we'll wait to hear what that is to do with, whether that is to do with an incident. That could be to do with the incident with Jordan Soanes, I believe, earlier on in this race. So we'll wait to find out from Race Control as Black Goldsaw trying to side his way through traffic with just over 52.5 minutes to go. We're on lap number, well, soon to be completing lap number 16. And a very good point in the YouTube chat from Elgard72, fighting won't help.
No, exactly, which is why I pondered the idea that maybe that was almost an orchestrated pass, but Goldsaw, I think, has just decided he wants to pull the pin, because that lap there was some 8 tenths quicker, wasn't it, than Honzik in second, so he's gapping him again. I wonder how long Yaroslav will let him do that before he decides to get a wriggle on and try and chase him back down again. Don't be fooled into thinking the only action is at the front of the field, because this is what the midfield looks like, and quite frankly I wouldn't want to be a part of this. It is all very messy indeed, and that was almost contact there. That was the 909 Porsche getting into the side of the number 8 Bentley. There might have been a bit of laggy internet involved there, mightn't there, because it looked as though the Porsche there, the 909, was slipping and sliding around the track in a slightly strange manner. Carlo Zorioni, that is, who now does actually make the pass going down the pit straight. So it goes to show there, doesn't it? Some drivers are really lifting down those straights, losing visibly speed to the cars around them.
Yeah, another penalty being issued. I did think it was the case. Valentin Barrier, who's just served that drive-through penalty. It was the incident involving him and Jordan Soames going through into Crowthorns on lap number 3. Avoidable contact. It was designated by race control as Mateus Caziella battling away for what is around about 26. This has got the BMW, the 732 of Belgium's Hein Renoir, trying to go around the outside. There is an Audi very much slowing, and that was going through towards sunset, as some drivers going a little bit wide. There's still Ryan Renoir's got Wojcik alongside, and they were going nearly 2x2. Hurrah, going down through into the S's. That's another bit where you can gain a little bit of fuel, but then also you lose all that fuel that you've gained by going up the incline, going through into Loikop. It's sort of like it's as I like to say about Kyalami, Andy, is the fact that the minute you go through Mineshaft, that's when the roller coaster ride here at Kyalami truly begins. Yeah,
it's a brilliant section of road, isn't it? Right the way down the hill, then climbing steeply back uphill again here into the braking zone for the Crocodiles. So it looks like Renoir has finally got the better of... Oh, well, no, he makes a real Horlicks of turn 13 and gives the play straight back again. So never mind, Boschek goes right back through again. Then you've got the McLaren, which I did see coming out of the pit lane a little bit earlier on, but that car is therefore a lap down, and that's Mikhail Novici, who has had a pit stop. I can't remember if that was a penalty or whether he had damage. I didn't see that car getting a penalty, so I'm not quite sure what the pit lane visit was for. Possibly, again, just trying to save that little bit of fuel, but he's given him a whole lap, lap and a bit away now, really, to the leaders, who continue to circulate very close together. Black Goldsaw had been getting away from Yaroslav Honsit, but there you can see the top 4 cars back together again, and then side by side in the background, that looked like a change for 5th place. I think Rick Zier's moved ahead now of Giovanni Magazzi, so change for 5th, Aston Martin ahead of Audi. Watch Richter's lap times with interest now, because I really think he's been backing off over the last few laps, saving fuel. He's going to be about 4 seconds behind this leading quartet. How quickly does he catch them? If it's a pretty rapid process, that tells me he's not fuel saving at this phase of the race.
No, I mean, when you look at the Bentley Continental GT3, you look at the torque outputs in Newton meters on these cars. The Bentley Continental GT3, 680 Newton meters. You then got the Audis, which doesn't... I mean, in some respects, having a lot of torque can actually do a bit more of a detriment to your fuel saving. Because looking at this, sometimes torque isn't always everything here, Andy, is it? I mean, you know, you look at the Lexus, a car that we would, you know, where you've got 530 Newton meters of torque. We've got one McLaren that pushes over 700 Newton meters of torque from its 4-litre M840 twin-turbo V8 from McLaren. You know, that produces 540 brake horsepower. Then you got Lamborghini, which I don't think we don't have any Lamborghinis either on this on this challenge. The Nissan 637, the Audi R8 LMS Evo, 550 Newton meters of torque. That can actually play into Otoki's favour, because it's not all about what you've got under the right foot, is it?
No, exactly. I mean, a torquey engine, it tends to rev a bit lower usually than some of the others, which can save you a bit of fuel. But as you say, that acceleration you're getting out of the corners means that as try as you might to save fuel, the engine is just thirstier than it is on other cars. I said keep an eye on the 5th place Aston Martin Bastian Richter. Well, on this lap alone, he's actually not taking huge chunks out of the cars ahead, is he? He's got the gap down under 4 seconds. to Dornell's in 4th place, but he's not racing towards them. So, yeah, not maybe showing quite the turn of speed I thought he might. Timo Berkel here in the 12th place Audi, the Leiper Esports car, under a lot of pressure from the 42 Aston Martin, which I thought was going to run into him there, of Patrick Nage. Nage has disappeared somewhere now. Did he go off the track altogether? He certainly lost a lot of time through the corner and won't be able to challenge for 12th place any time soon. The drivers, though, do generally seem to have now got themselves into clear bits of track, don't they? Everyone seems quite content now running where they are, within reason. Yeah, we're into that middle part of the race now where I thought things might start to settle into a bit more of a rhythm.
Yeah, well, at the moment, the lead between Black Goldsaw and Jaroslav Honzik now extends to just over 7, well, make that just over a second. Leon Otocki is closing. He was actually the slowest out of the trio, but not the slowest out of the quartet, because that belongs to Renato Dornelles. Here's Jan Kaminski, and that is the recovering Jordan Soanes. A couple of laps ago, Soanes was down in 19th position. He's got past Jan Kaminski, running in the Valkenhorst Motorsport colours. Valkenhorst Motorsport now have signed Marco Wittmann for some duties this year in GT3. But that's a good job there by Soanes, using again. Now, obviously, looking at comparisons here, the BMW doesn't have that much torque, but it's a hefty vehicle as well. Front-engined, rear-wheel drive, as we've now got something coming in. I think a penalty is going to be coming in very shortly, and that is for the number 10. That is of Matt Muirhead, and he has got a 10-second time penalty for aggressive driving, involving an incident between himself and the number 36 of Nicolo Corato in the Ferrari on lap number 3. So that means that Muirhead will have an additional 10 seconds added to his complete race time, as we now go back to Samuel Hatz from Racing Line Motorsport, closing on Sidemax's very own Lukas Kreuzer. So it is Marinella's finest versus the Pride of Weissach, going through into Crowthorns now, into the right-hander through the Juxkay sweep. So we've got 35 minutes completed, 45 minutes to go. Attila Denks from Hungary in the number 18 BMW. He's sandwiched between Muirhead and Grasel at the moment, but Denks will effectively try and do his level best. Now, we've seen him before on Super Saturday. Now there is a Porsche. Oh, well, there's Zoloni in the number 909. And he's got Dominiak just behind as well in the number 47, as they fire their way through the kink and down into Crowthorns. And just looking at the lap times again, Andy, Black Goldsaw's just put in a personal best in sectors 1 and 2, and also an overall lap time of 1 minute 42.375. I think now the times are really coming to the drivers, and the economy challenge has sort of been swept under the carpet, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that maybe tells me Goldsaw's confident that he saved enough fuel, but we really don't think he has, do we? Because we think the Bentleys have been running far too quickly and in far too lower fuel settings. So, yeah, answers on a postcard as to what he's doing. But Honzik's sort of going with him, isn't he? He's a second or so behind, and they've both really gapped the cars behind. Still Leon Otocki in 3rd, Dornell's 4th, Richter 5th. And Richter is kind of now catching Dornell's. He's about 3.3 seconds back as we check in with Dornell's. Now, is he going to be tempted here to make a move on Otocki? He can see the other two Bentleys disappearing into the distance. This is the thing, you can sometimes be goaded, can't you, into going a bit too quickly. When you see the cars ahead of you building a gap, you sit there thinking, well, have I got this all wrong? Have I got the calculations wrong? Can I start pushing as well now? But that's not always the right thing to do, nor is making contact through the crocodiles, which I thought the 909 Porsche was going to be involved in again there. We've already seen Zolioni in a little bit of contact earlier on at that corner, just about avoids it this time, and moves himself ahead there of the BMW of Denk. So he's creeping back here, isn't he, towards the top 20.
Yeah, very much the case, as now Goldsaw has extended that lead over Jaroslav Honzik to nearly a second and a half. And then a further few seconds back, Leon Otocki running in the 1:43.3s, and right up his back bumper he's got Renato Dornelles. So the top 4 covered by just over 4 seconds at the end of what is now 21 laps completed. And there's Pavel Dominiak, who's ahead of Wojcik and Kadziela. There's Renoir. They're all coming through now. There's Jordan Burrows in the 185 Bentley. We've also got Luca Ziga at the back of that train in the 199. You can just see how close these cars are getting. No one's giving anyone a chance to get away. Maybe some of these drivers were going 11 tenths at the beginning of the race, but now they've decided, well, I might want to start saving fuel, but then it's something completely different when you're trying to go through as Dominic going round the outside of Attila Danks, who's just had Muirhead go round the outside of him, going into mineshaft. So the Bentley had a good run going through the outside of the corner, and this could be very, very close indeed. Attila Danks still nigh on side by side as it's three abreast going into the crocodiles nigh on as Dominic goes onto the curbing there. Nearly ends up in the clutches of Cadziella in the number 8, and then Renoir just behind in one of the other BMWs. As now there's a bit of a run wide and a half by Vorchik in the 66 as they're scrabbling over each other's wheel arches at the moment here, Andy. No one's giving any let up, and no one's trying to lay all their cards out in front of everybody else and say, yeah, look, I've got the high hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dominic's had enough of this, though, hasn't he? He's been scything his way through this group because everyone's just being so cautious. When someone tries to overtake the car ahead, it's almost like the car that's under attack is just like, well, come on then, get on with overtaking me, and then we can get back in line and keep saving fuel, because no one really wants to waste time and fuel, crucially, battling with each other. And the trouble is, if everyone's got the same opinion and everyone's being really cautious, then they just end up running into each other and still losing time to the cars ahead. So I think that Dominic's decided enough is enough, and he just wants to get out of this mess, and he's done so successfully for the time being. On board here with Cadziella in the number 8 Bentley, and he's got those 2 BMWs ahead of him. René Renoir, quick driver. I've seen him go well in GT4 machinery as well in the past, in that blue and black BMW, trying to apply the pressure to Danks ahead, but actually under more pressure, arguably, from the cars behind. And then you've got this lapped McLaren that continues to show good pace. It's a shame, in a way, they had that pit stop early on, isn't it? Because the 56 McLaren is actually looking like it's a bit quicker than all of the cars around it.
Yeah, the 720S GT3, not exactly a slouch. That's Mikko Nowicki rounding out the top 40, and is quite a considerable distance behind Robert Arlavi in the number 89 Ferrari. There's Jonas van Druyten. Oh, Zoloni's striking again. No lag spikes there from the Italian in the number 909, as they now hurtle their way down through into the kink. And then through into Crowthorns. Van Druyten takes the tight line. And just looking at the lap times again, I mean, just to see that Ottoki's ramped up the pace, so has Dornell's. They're literally within half a second of each other. I mean, as much as I'd like to see either Goldsaw or win this, and there's a moment between Zoloni and Van Druyten, and that was going through... my goodness. And that was going through barbecue that particular time. I mean, what on earth was that?
That was, I think the term is red mist descending, because Jonas was tagged into a spin, wasn't he, there? Going into barbecue. And I don't think he appreciated it, funnily enough, and decided to show exactly how he felt as they both sort of rejoined from the moment. But the whole thing was a bit unnecessary, really. There was a big old gap being left on the inside. They somehow still ended up making contact. And this is Zieg now coming back up the inside. Now, careful, boys. We are watching you. Let's not let this fight get too physical. You both ended up back on the same piece of track. And I'm pretty sure that Aston Martin is going to become very, very wide now. He absolutely won't want to let the Porsche through without a fight. Round the outside goes Zieg now in the 199, but there's just no way through. So, yes, let's just move on and pretend that didn't happen, shall we? Well, the battle's still going on, actually, as they drop down through the mine shaft. And this is brave. There's grass out there. There's just about enough room left. And they do this time avoid trading paint with the Porsche moving ahead. Good little battle, this, actually. It's a shame that we had the contact earlier on in the lap. But you can see here the different parts of the circuit, different cars do have strengths and weaknesses, don't they? The rear-engine Porsche, for example, getting off those tight corners particularly nicely.
that was that was not Carlos Zoloni. So Zoloni and Van Druyten had a bit of a handbags at dawn fest there, going through barbecue, unfortunately. But Lucas Ziga again, just proving how being there at the right place at the right time, very much the case. But also the biggest thing is that the economy on that Aston Martin of Jonas Van Druyten won't be very economic, because the aerodynamics have somewhat had a slight spanner in the works thrown at them, in the fact that that clamshell bonnet is not lined up on every single panel line at this particular moment, especially with the headlights as well. As Leon Otoki very much closing with Jaroslav Honzik, as Black Goldsaw continues to lead. We've got just over 36.5 minutes of the economy challenge here at Kyalami, and Goldsaw's lead is now 3.1 seconds with just over 36 or so minutes to go. Interesting strategy, Cole, from Goldsaw, but one of the things is that when did these drivers decide to use their second set of tyres, or are they leaving them until, we might even see a last gasp of pit lane entrances for drivers here, Andy, that if they kept a set of tyres in, they could possibly use them to their advantage, and if they've got enough fuel to get to the end of the race, that's the perfect opportunity. If it's 15, 20 minutes to go, I think don't count anyone outside of the top 10.
Yes, definitely, because it could be that all of the drivers inside the top 10 or so have got this completely wrong, and they're all going to run out of fuel with 5 minutes to go. This lot, we're lucky to get to 5 minutes to go the way they're going. This battle's been raging for the last 10 or 15 minutes. René Renoir there in the blue BMW has been battling away with Matheus Cagella in the blue number 8 Bentley. And then they've also got Attila Denks there in the other of the BMWs. And every time we join these three, they're in a completely different order. It's changing almost by the corner. No one really seems to want to lead this little gaggle of cars. Or certainly no one seems able to do it for that long. And again, this lapped McLaren making a bit of a nuisance of itself, because it's every bit as quick as the cars around it, but not really racing them for position. It nearly had Renoir off the road there by carrying an awful lot of speed up through Clubhouse and down towards the S as he now pulls aside, lets the Bentley of Cagella go through, and the battle can once again resume. Back to your point about the leading Bentleys though, Black Goldsaw, if he can win this race, I will be amazed, because the pace he is running, it just doesn't make any sense. He pulls these big gaps, and then he maybe spends 2 or 3 laps kind of half maybe kind of thinking about saving fuel, and then he puts his foot down again and pulls another big gap. He is certainly not saving fuel in the way that others appear to be. He is simply going for outright pace, and well, unless he's worked out something that the rest of the field still haven't quite calculated themselves, I don't really see how that's a winning strategy. But hey, I've been wrong before.
Well, there's definitely a bit of a moment there for Cagella. I've just seen him going through Cheetah and heading down into Ingwe. I think, as long as these drivers are, from what I understand, that the magic fuel number per lap is 2.5 litres. Now, if Black Goldsaw is trying to do his level best to be as close to that whilst being consistently quick, I will definitely be rather impressed like yourself. But Jaroslav Honzik again has started opening up, as has Otoki. Now here's a replay. This is Oloni versus Van Druyten as they go through into Crowthorne, up through the right-hander here at Juxque Sweep. Now through into Barbecue. Zoloni just sends it. Oh, well, that was definitely a lick the stamp and send it. And, Van Druyten just decides to spin up the rear tyres and goes, well, one good shove deserves another there, mate.
Having seen it again, I can now see why Van Druyten was annoyed. On first appearance, it looked like maybe he closed the door a bit, but no, he definitely left room, and the Porsche was a long way behind. I'm still not condoning driving deliberately into the car that just spun you as you both try and rejoin, but I can at least understand where his frustration came from, I guess. True to form, these 4 cars are in a different order now than the last time we saw them, because we've got another Bentley joining in the fun. This is the recovering Burrows, isn't it? Who, correct me if I'm wrong, because he served a penalty earlier on or something. I think he did, didn't he? So he's well out of position, should therefore have the pace to get back ahead of this group. He's already got himself past the number 8 Bentley, and now he's trying to get more.
Well, Zoloni's just at it again with Van Druyten as they've just gone through Mineshaft.
Oh,
no! Now, that was unnecessary. That was completely unnecessary.
Wait for it.
Yeah. The NASCAR style revenge, as Patrick James Simpson said earlier. Well, that was, I think on that particular incident, I think race control might very well have a field day. But I have to come back to a YouTube comment. Marcus from Leipert Esports saying, Timo Berkel doing his first race in Leipert Esports colours. Happy to have him join us. Well, Berkel at the moment currently P13 in the 116 Audi. He actually started P11, but yeah, that incident there between Zoloni and Van Droyten, I think that had danger written all over it, didn't it?
Yeah, it was a little bit awkward, wasn't it? We're hearing that there might have been some lag involved. I mean, that's one of the go-to excuses for sim races, isn't it? To say that on my screen I didn't actually make contact with them, but yeah, I'm sure they'll investigate that. But you could just see it coming, can't you? When you've got two drivers that aren't very happy with each other, you can guarantee that they will keep finding each other on the track, and they'll keep racing each other, and they'll keep getting madder and madder at each other. And yeah, I think it did all rather come to a head there, didn't it? Right, back to some good, clean racing, he says, touching wood, as we've got the Jordan Burroughs Bentley gaining another place there, and also Rene Renoir has got himself ahead of Denks now, so Denks dropping back a bit here, 2 places lost on the most recent lap, and Renoir having another one of these real sort of spikes of pace where they get released and they think, right, I've saved enough fuel, now I can go for it, and they build a bit of a gap against the cars they've been racing with. Renoir now into 23rd place, and Miniac is his next target, about 1.2 seconds up the road as well. Okay then, let's see what happens here. We're on board heading down the hill, we're on board with the Porsche. Alex, talk us through it.
Right, we're on board with Zoloni, heading through Mineshaft, and well, that just I don't really need to say anything further about that, Andy. But I think I'll be completely honest, I think Zoloni had, well, whether he thought about braking or decided not to hit the brake pedal, that's going to be an investigation from race control. We're both commentators, but that could have been a little bit of revenge in the making. But we'll leave for race control to decide that. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, Jaroslav Honzik has been closed in by Leon Otocki and also Dornelles. So Renato Dornelles will be he's very much been, I'm just looking where he started actually. He started down in P8 and he's 4th at the moment. So one of the other things is that Dornelles, has he been running at full power? If he hasn't, he's done a very, very shrewd thing. Leon Otocki, and now the back marker's really coming into this as well, because you can now see that Goldsaw, he might have gotten 3.3 seconds up the road here, Andy. But now with this back marker traffic, that's going to bring it into the hands of these three behind, as we've got 29 minutes on the clock still to go here at Kyalami. I think that Goldsaw isn't quite out of the woods yet.
No, absolutely. I don't think he is. I think he's used too much fuel, quite honestly. And I think that Dornelles might have this absolutely right, because if you think, I mean, all of the other 3 cars ahead of him have led the race at one point or another, haven't they? Goldsaw, Honzik and Otocki, they've all been out in front, they've all pushed hard. At no point have we seen Dornelles going anywhere near the lead. He's always been like the last car, or last car but one, in the lead group, and that's where he is now. He's 4th place. He's doing exactly what I said he needed to do. He's staying in touch with the leaders without really racing them. He's just sort of coasting around behind them. I reckon, I mean, we can't see the fuel numbers ourselves, but I would be willing to bet a little bit of money on the fact that Dornelles has saved more fuel than the 3 ahead of him, because he's not been particularly racy, and because everyone else in front have been busy racing each other, they've held each other up and allowed him to keep pace with them without pushing too hard. So yeah, if I were aboard that white number 3 Bentley right now, I would be feeling quite good about my chances.
Well, it looks like he is feeling very good about his chances, because Dornell's looking up the inside of Otocki, and that is going through. Oh, that's brave from the Bentley. He nearly got through right there and then, but now the back marker just up ahead. That's another Bentley as well. You can just see how much they are now scrabbling. So we've got another penalty coming through. Incident on involving cars 13, 114 and 575. That is Ciesla. And then the 114 of Dancer, and then the 575 of Patrick Lipka. The number 13 of Ciesla gets a drive-through penalty for avoidable contact. As now we really get into the meat and potatoes of this economy challenge, because now a lot of the drivers are pushing like crazy. They are starting to build the pace. We've got on our screen Samuel Hatz and also Lukas Kreutzer just up ahead of them, about half a second, running the KCMG livery on that Nissan. Darren King, and he's closing in on that's Luke Whitehead ahead of him. So Darren King. Now obviously one of the other things that I noticed in the chat, that the Nissan actually has a slightly bigger fuel tank than the Bentley, 130 litres to 120. So maybe the Nissan could start coming on strong. And looking at what Darren King is, he's just under 4/10 behind. We go to the Nissan as they go through Ingwe. I think the Nissan's really got a good opportunity to run here to go up the inside for what will be P7, as Darren King just keeping in the slipstream. Going through into the kink, now down into the left-hander at Crowthorns. Darren King is starting to really bring the pace, and I've just seen he's put in a 143.5. Black Gold Store Andy's put in a 143.0. Honzik a 143.7. Otoki a 144.0. Dornell's a 144.4. Richter's running in the 143s. You were talking about him earlier. And Giovanni Migazzi running in the 145.3s. But Whitehead and Kreutzer looking to be the slowest out of everybody in this top 10. We've got just over 25.5 minutes. I think Economy Challenge is now pretty much open season. And to be completely truthful, Darren King could be one of the danger drivers this evening.
Well, I'm going to go off the fact that we haven't really seen him, and I think that's a good thing, because I think those that we've seen a lot of, we've been seeing either because they've been tangling with people, or they've been pushing really hard to lead the race. I quite like this tactic of just staying towards the back of the top 10 and saving a bit more fuel. I'm almost certain it will be someone that flies under the radar who ends up coming out on top of this, but we shall find out. We're getting towards that crucial part of the race now, aren't we? 25 minutes to go. They're not really going to start running out of fuel until the last 5 minutes, but this is where it's panic stations now, isn't it? As you get towards the end of the race, the time starts creeping up on you, and if you haven't saved enough fuel yet, this is where you really start to let that consume all of your thoughts. This has been a terrific battle, hasn't it? Jordan Burroughs, René Renoir tied together by a very short piece of string for quite a long time now, and with Kajela there still behind in the number 8 Bentley. Where's Denks gone? Now he's dropped right down to 28th. Forgive me if I've forgotten this, Alex, because a lot has happened in this race, but I don't think we've seen any obvious reason for him to drop backwards. So unless he's had a moment off camera, Denks certainly falls out of this battle anyway. Burrows up the inside of Renoir, doesn't make it, stick going down through the mine shaft into the Crocodiles. Renoir takes that defensive line in the 732 BMW. It keeps him ahead on the way in, but it gives Burrows the better exit speed. There's nowhere to go, though, on the run up the hill towards the penultimate corner at Cheetah. And so he drops back in behind. Good battle, this.
Yeah, very much the case. So just had a look on the timing, Andy. Attila Denks down in 27th position. And he's actually behind Luca Ziga as we still concentrate our way on this. We've just seen that Jonas van der Ruijten absolutely speechless about the second incident involving Carlos Zoloni not that long ago, as we ride on board with Leon Otoki. He's now closing on Jaroslav Honzik for second position once again. And on the previous lap, Otoki was nearly nearly 4/10 of a second quicker as Burrows goes a bit wide coming out of Barbecue on the run down towards Sunset, as he's got Ryan Renoir just up ahead. The BMW versus the Bentley. They've got Canziella just behind, and there's a turnaround for Renoir, and that means that Canziella gets through. And that means that both of them have to, they brought out the yellow flags for one thing, but that was, that was going to be a case of the slightest amount of touching, especially when you touch the rear end of a BMW. You look at that, okay, it's a very, very hefty car, But you turn that around in a corner with the slightest of touches, Andy, irrespective of whether it is a front-engined rear-wheel drive car. Any rear-wheel drive car will definitely be turned around at a moment's notice with even the slightest of glancing blows.
Yeah, and through sunset, I mean, the cars are on the ragged edge. You could almost reach out and just turn it round by pushing it with your finger. You know, they're really on the ragged edge through there. But that is a corner where you can really lift and coast, because if you lift off going in, you really want to carry good speed through there anyway. That's kind of the way you drive that corner, isn't it? You get a bit of braking done on the way in, and then you just kind of coast through to the apex and gently get back on the throttle. And I just think Jordan Burroughs miscalculated it that time. He rolled a bit too far into the centre, got into the back of Renoir. I don't think that one was intentional at all. He clearly wasn't trying to overtake because they'd already fully committed to the corner. I think he just carried too much speed through, and you don't want to hit the brakes. As soon as you hit the brakes, that means you need extra throttle on the exit to pick the speed back up, and unfortunately just a bit of a misjudgment that time.
Well, the jury's out on that incident between Carlo Zaloni and Jonas van Druyten. Zaloni gets a drive-through for avoidable contact. Well, I think that's for the first one, though. I've just been told by Michael Hamlet. You know what they say, double bubble spells trouble. That will be the case, I think, for Carlo Zaloni. But now Leon Ottoki closing in on Jardier. These two are literally at each other, banging down each other's doors at the moment. But Honzik doing a good defensive job in the Bentley, making that Continental GT3 as wide as possible. And you can just see he's just using that deft touch, you know, coaxing the car in, not over rotating, not over driving the car, but he's just making sure that when he's having to lift and coast, he's making sure that he's also mitigating for any potential opportunity that Ottoki could see coming his way. And Honzik is not giving Ottoki any opportunity whatsoever. And as they say, you give someone an inch, they're going to take a mile.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the hardest position to be here out of these three cars is in the front, because as soon as you lift to try and save some fuel, if you're Honzik, then Ottoki is just going to see that as a chance to get up the inside and go through. The Audi is definitely later on the brakes there, going into the crocodiles, but that is a feature actually of the Audi. It's always been good on the brakes. The big, heavy Bentley maybe has to brake that little bit earlier, so the Audi closes in through this technical run up the hill towards Ingwe, the final corner. This, remember, is for second position. Honzik second, Ottoki third, Dornell's fourth, Bentley, Audi from Bentley. And look at the way that Richter's catching them as well. Only 2 seconds back now, so the Aston Martin in fifth is getting closer. It's getting towards go time now, isn't it? We've got 19 and a half minutes to go, and the leader is 5, nearly 6 seconds ahead of this group. So there's a sense of urgency, I think, now, isn't there? Certainly from Ottoki to get through into second and chase down the race leader.
Well, the urgency isn't coming from just Ottoki, it's come from Richter, who's just put in a 1:42.8 with just under 19 and a half minutes to go here in the Economy Challenge at Kyalami, live and uninterrupted here on the sim grid. Renato Dornelles from Vacuum Racing in the number 3 Bentley Continental GT3. Now, someone did kick up the dust there. Was that Jaroslav Honzik or possibly Leon Ottoki? Looks like Jonas van Druyten has unfortunately retired from this race. But this battle for second, third and fourth in the final 18 3/4 minutes. Richter now has seen, and he's already dropped the gap to Dornelles down from 2 seconds to 1.7. So the Aston Martin definitely picking up pace. It's got a lot more torque than the 3 cars in front of it in terms of singular engine displacements and also power and torque outputs. 700 Newton meters provided by that 4-litre twin-turbo V8 engine, originally supplied by Mercedes, but has a little bit of Aston Vetteling done to it. But you can just see now, I think Richter seems a lot, sees the 3 unwilling prey between them, and Dornelles is just trying to go up the inside there on Ottoki. This is going to give Richter the run he needs, but Dornelles goes back into the momentum. That was a very, very slick idea to do that right there and then to get the toe going down into Crowthorns, but he's not going to have the opportunity to go up the inside of Ottoki, who was possibly looking up the inside of Jaroslav Honzik for second position as they go through now into barbecue. This is getting absolutely crazy. And Bastian Richter is less than a second behind the number 3 Bentley. For second position, I've got 2 words, Andy, game on.
Yeah, absolutely. This is all being caused here by Honzik, isn't it? Honzik is really, really slow. On the previous couple of laps, he's been the best part of a second slower than Goldsaw in front and Richter in 5th, who are kind of the 2 drivers in clean air. They've both been able to take big chunks out of him, so I think Honzik's panicking a bit here. We're riding on board there with him. Look on the left-hand side. We don't think he's got enough fuel, and I think he's just realised that, and now he's really backed off the pace. Look at the way that Goldsaw's pulled away, 7.1 seconds at the start of the lap, 6.5. So in the first half a lap alone, that's another 3/4 of a second lost. Honzik, I think, is in trouble here, and it's only a matter of time before Atoki gets through. He's doing a good job of defending, though, isn't he? Especially considering the fuel saving he must be doing.
Yeah. It's actually, I mean, the thing is that Jardier has got a smile on his face, of course, showing on his stream. He's going to every single red line. I mean, you can see that when he's downshifting, it's like literally bouncing off the rev limiter. I think he's on. Oh, and that's Dornell's that has gone round through Ingwe. So the number 3's effort started in 8th position, got as high as 4th. I didn't quite see what happened at the tail end of that. Was there possible contact between him and Richter? I'm not too sure, or whether he lost it all on his own. But now this gives Bastian Richter a real bullseye in the crosshairs, because he's got Honzik and Atoki just up ahead. And again, as we know, Jaroslav Honzik spends a hell of a lot of time, as do Atoki and Richter, and a lot of drivers on this platform. The gap between first and second now 7.6. We're coming into the last 15 minutes in just under 40 seconds time. And Atoki here, Andy, swarming all over the back bumper of Honzik. It's going to be a case of not if, it's going to be a case of when does Atoki pull the pin on the grenade. But then you've got to worry about the second grenade having the pin pulled on it behind, courtesy of Bastian Richter.
Yeah, Richter was held up a bit there by the spin for Dornell's. Let's see a replay. I think this is going to be that moment. Yeah, up into the last corner. So there's Dornell's in the white Bentley. Now he is a long way ahead of Richter, isn't he? But they really stack up at the apex. Richter was just taking so much more speed through the corner. But I think he'll get in trouble for that, won't he? Because you can blame the cars in front for going slowly, but it's still your responsibility as the car behind to react to that and not drive into them. So, yeah, I think that red and black Aston Martin, now up into 4th place, of course, will possibly be feeling the wrath of the stewards within the next quarter of an hour or so. And that means that this battle takes on extra significance, because should anything happen to Black Goldsaw out in front, these 2 drivers would be the first 2 to benefit. Again, Richter really closes in through the final turn. The thing is, though, for Goldsaw, he has got an 8.5 second cushion to play with. If he needs to start fuel saving, he can do that now, and he's safe in the knowledge that he's under no pressure from behind, which is not a luxury that Honzik can enjoy, because at the inside goes Atoki, and there's contact through the first corner, there's more contact, and Honzik is spat out sideways, Atoki goes through. Well, we'll have to see that from an external view, ideally, to see whose fault that was, but that is a real shame, because that was a brilliant battle, and it had been squeaky clean up until that point.
Yeah, another penalty being issued by race control. Penalty for number 47, Pavel Dominiak, for avoidable contact involving cars number 47 and number 66. That was Michal Wojcik on lap number 29. So that's a real shame for Dominiak, who currently at this particular moment is 22nd at the moment, so he'll have to serve that drive-through. But I think Atoki went up the inside, tried to go for the move. I'm not too sure, just judging by where he was in proximity to Jaroslav Honzik. It might have been a bit of a 50-50, but I would love to see a replay of that from another camera angle, because Bastian Richter, I think, you know, the way that he got through that, he literally was right. He'd actually let off the throttle, so he'd kept away from what was going on between the pair of them, and he did exactly the right thing, because it allowed, not only did Atoki get through, as we're now going to go onto this replay. So this is going through the kink. We're now heading down into Crowthorns. So Atoki sees the gap as Jardier brakes, and you see here, that's very, very close. And there goes Richter. Richter was in exactly the right place at the right time, got past Jardier. But I think, just judging from that angle, that Leon Otocchi was not far enough alongside, because did you see his brake lights actually light up on the back of that Audi? I don't think I did.
He certainly braked later, didn't he, than the car ahead, and he will argue that he was alongside, and at the end of the day, Otocchi couldn't go any further left. He was up on the curb, and it wasn't that he drifted right into Honzik, it was more the other way round. So I really don't know. It could go either way, that. It would be a shame if that ends up being decided in the steward's room, because, as I said, it was a brilliant battle and it could prove to be really significant. We're going to see another replay. So, I mean, he outbrakes the Bentley, but that's fair enough. He's up the inside, and Otocchi makes the corner. He doesn't really run wide. He bounces off the curb a bit, but he does make the turn. You are allowed to brake later than the car in front of you. After all, this is a motor race, so I think it was a legitimate move. But as for who moved across on who, it's a little bit harder to tell.
Yeah, I'm also hearing that possibly that both Jardier and maybe even Black Goldsaw might not have enough fuel. I mean, Goldsaw at the moment, he's got a 9.7 second cushion with just under 11 and a half minutes to go. And to be honest with you, you were very, very much of the opinion that if Otocchi and Richter, they are now doing 144. Well, Otocchi's done a 144.199. Richter's just done a 144.487. I mean, to be honest with you, these laps are going to be incredibly slow. So if we're doing like 1 minute 43s or something like that, okay, give or take 6, maybe 7 laps. We're on now lap number 41 as we're on board with Black Goldsaw. He's just made his way through barbecue. He's got one of the back marker Ferraris just up ahead who's going to let him through because the blue flags will be waved. And the thing is that now Black Goldsaw, okay, he's bouncing off the rev limiter going down the gears, but also going up the gears, he's also redlining. So whether has Black Goldsaw timed this to perfection? We've got just over 10 minutes to go, and I don't think the jury's out yet, Andy, because I mean, okay, it's great to have a 9.5 second advantage, and you've got the advantage of going through Loikop and then through into Mineshaft, which we're going to see now. Like literally, he's bouncing off the rev limiter up into 5th, like literally just going through, minimising the amount of red line that car is using up the gears. And I think maybe has Goldsaw done enough?
So, well, there's 2 things I'm noticing here. One is how early he's lifting. Look at how early that right foot comes off the throttle. It's coming off a long way before the left foot goes anywhere near the brake, so the lift and coast is still ongoing. But here's what I think. He's 9.5 seconds ahead with 9.5 minutes to go. If he needed to save fuel, he could. If he needed to save fuel, he would be saving fuel, and he's just not relenting, is he? So I think he wouldn't be going this fast unless he was confident that he can get to the end without running out of fuel, because if he really, really had to, he's got the margin now to drop back into. So this impressive pace that we're seeing from him, I think, is a sign that he's confident he's got this all wrapped up. He's actually built the gap up again there by another couple of tenths on the previous lap, so it's up to 9.7 seconds now. I think that's a real message that he's sending out to everyone else that, hey, I could back off, but I don't need to. I've got enough fuel to get to the end. We'll see whether he's got the calculations right, because of course it could all go horribly wrong, couldn't it? He'll also want to try and make sure that he doesn't sort of cross the start-finish line with, 5-10 seconds to go at the end of the race, because that'll mean doing a whole extra lap that would be a bit unnecessary. But yeah, I think the fact that he's not backing off, even though he could do, sort of says it all.
Yeah, oh well, Carlos Zoloni's night has gone from bad to worse. He's got another penalty. Stop go 10 for avoidable contact with Jonas van der Ruyten on lap 27. Well, for Carlos Zoloni, the hits, they keep on coming, and this time it's a double slap on the wrist for that particular individual. So not exactly been the best night for, well, Jonas van der Ruyten I have to feel sorry for 2 incidents, but then obviously Carlos Zoloni, he's definitely been classed as the villain in a Batman movie with those 2 incidents. Here's Matt Muirhead, who's got a 10-second time penalty for obviously what happened on lap 3. There's Hadvig Grasel in the GRA number 78 Ferrari, And he's got Wojciech just up his back bumper in the number 66 as Jordan Burrows now serves a drive-through penalty, possibly for track limits. Well, they've been out on the circuit for just over an hour and 10. Well, actually, I thought it might have been track limits. No, it was for actually avoidable contact. So Jordan Burrows with an incident on the number 732, Hein Renoir. Burrows gets a drive-through for avoidable contact. So that will drop him out of, it's going to drop him out of the top 25 and put him behind Attila Denks from Hungary. So, and at the moment, still, but I've been keeping my eyes on Bastian Richter because the battle for second, very much not done and dusted. Leon Otocki is nearly 10.5 seconds behind Black Goldsaw, but Bastian Richter has just pumped in a 1:42.7. That Aston, I think, has got a little bit more fuel in the tank to burn, and he's burning it right now with 6.5 minutes to go.
Yeah, I think he's got the pace to take second place on the road, at least. There is still the question mark about the contact he had with Dornelles, isn't there, of course? And actually, Dornelles is not far behind Jaroslav Honzik after their respective issues. They've found themselves together now battling for 4th place. But, we're into that slightly unknown area now, aren't we? Because we've done getting up for 75 minutes. Flat out, these cars can do 65 to 70 minutes.
Yeah.
It was always the last 10 or 15 we weren't sure about, and realistically the last 5 or 10 was when we were going to start seeing cars run out of fuel. Someone will run out of fuel, I'm fairly certain of that. Whether it's any of the leaders, I don't know, but this is now where we go into the unknown territory. Can they make it to the end? This could all really start kicking off, couldn't it, over the next few minutes?
Yeah, very much the case there. Well put there, Andy, because we've got just over 5.5 minutes to go. Bastian Richter has just put in a 1:42.2, and he is within 0.6 of Leon Otocki, and it's just gone purple on lap number 43 with a 30.339. Bastian Richter has unleashed all those hounds on that 4-litre twin-turbo V8, producing 535 brake horsepower and 700 newton meters of torque. So now Bastian Richter fancies a sniff at second position with just a few moments to go, as that's Wojciech going wide, and that was going through Cheetah before the rundown into the left-hander here at Ingwe. And now a incident Leon Otocki drive-through penalty for avoidable contact. That was the incident with him and Jaroslav Honzik. So Leon Otocki now will have to, he's basically handed second place to Bastian Richter, and if it was, say, like 10 minutes to go, I would think that Bastian Richter is going to do one thing only. Now this is a three-way scrap you don't really want to be sandwiched in the middle of. Grasel there, as he's definitely fighting his way through with Wojciech, who's just got ahead of him, as Jaroslav Honzik now trying to make his way up towards Dornelles, but Dornelles has passed Jardier on the road. But Richter now, if he wants to do something to try and see that if in the next 3 minutes and 40 seconds, where the Black Goldsaw will run out of fuel before this economy challenge goes to the checkered flag, is anyone's guess. 11.2 seconds, but Goldsaw is still putting in 1 minute 42.5s as Jardier now back onto his stream, and he's got Luke Whitehead with him just behind, I think. Now Jardier has gone into full fuel saving mode. He's on map 8, Andy.
Yeah, so this is what we've been saying, though. I think he's been panicking for a while that he's not got enough fuel, because that's why his pace sort of dropped off by a second to a second and a half a lap about 10-15 minutes ago. He was going too hard in the early stages. But what I don't understand is if he's running out of fuel, how is Black Goldsaw not running out of fuel? Because he's been going even quicker than him for even longer. So unless he's managed to fit a secret reserve fuel tank into that Bentley that we don't know about, I have no idea how Goldsaw is doing this. He could just be going for his 5 minutes of fame, I suppose, couldn't he? Knowing full well he's going to run out of fuel before the end, but it would look quite good, wouldn't it, if he built up a big lead, which he has. 11.2 seconds is the biggest lead that anyone's had, and still, try as he might, Richter just can't keep up. He was 2/10 slower again on the previous lap, and with now just 2 laps to go, the gap is getting bigger, not smaller, and Goldsaw still not showing any signs of backing off.
Well, this has definitely been the case, as Otoki has now dropped out of the top 5, and also just been keeping an eye on Jordan Soames. He's running in 16th position, and he's 7.5 seconds behind Samuel Hatz. But in some respects here, that Black Goldsaw has literally, I think he's hit the gold mine, so to speak, here in South Africa, because he's on the 47th, and look, he's on map 1. He's on map 1 is Black Goldsaw. So how has he... you know what, one of the first questions it is, I cannot understand. I mean, you know, when you said about secret fuel tank, you remember BAR getting penalised in Formula 1 for having an additional couple of litres in the I think it was in the nozzle, leading to the fuel tank, which got them excluded from the Monte Carlo Grand Prix. But Goldsaw, I don't know how he's done this, but he really has... you know what's even more astounding? Michael Hamlet's just told me that Jardier's got 2 litres left and he's on map 8. Will Jardier be the first person to run out of fuel with 2 litres? He's got to be on maximum fuel save right now.
Where are the leader? The leader's just gone on to his last lap, hasn't he? So that is going to be tight, because we said, what was it, about 1.3, 1.4 litres a lap? So he might just get there, but there certainly won't be any time for victory donuts, will there? Or any fuel left for victory donuts for any of the drivers that happen to make it to the end. They're going to be crawling across on fumes. This, by the way, is all for position. This is all for 17th place. Kaminsky, Muirhead, Boschik, Lozanov, Dominiak, Grassel, all absolutely nose to tail. Brilliant racing, considering we've been going now for essentially 80 minutes and they've supposedly been saving fuel. It's remarkably close racing, but we are on the final lap of the race. Oh no, and that's King off in the Nissan. Godzilla, I'm afraid, has been slain. It's in the barriers coming out of, I think that's out of Cheetah, isn't it? And that will be his race over. But the race is almost over for everyone. Half a lap to go, and well, against all of the odds here, Alex, it looks like Black Goldsaw is going to do it.
He's probably lifting and coasting, going down through mine shaft. He's just got a couple more corners to go. He's actually, well, I've just been told, Black Goldsaw is at absolutely full send in this Bentley Continental GT3. One more corner remains after this one. And to be honest with you, how on earth did Jodier get it so wrong? But Black Goldsaw comes out of Ingwe after 47 laps. The economy challenge is won by the 88 of Black Goldsaw, who qualified P3. He wins the race. And Bastian Richter will very shortly come across the line himself. And Jardier is, look, literally, he's in 3rd gear. He's out of fuel. He's done a what was it, a Win Cup back at Bathurst. So Bastian Richter takes 2nd position. Renato Dornelles takes 3rd. Luke Whitehead, what a run from the number 7 Bentley. Started down in 16th position, and he will round out the top 4 places. Leon Otoki started on pole position after a drive-through penalty following the contact between him and Jaroslav Honzik. And look, it's the number 11 that's pushing Jardier. That's Gergely Kunsabo, of all people, pushing Jaroslav Honzik across the line. So, oh my goodness. And we knew that someone was going to be running out of fuel, and Jardier's just absolutely laughing his head off as Gergely Kunsabo hits the barriers after pushing him across the line. Oh, who'd have thunk it? The economy challenge here on the sim grid. We had dramas at the beginning of the race. We've even got people actually running out of fuel. We've had people in the barriers on the last lap. But Black Goldsaw, my goodness me. started third, and after the end of 80 minutes, 47 laps around this fantastic circuit here at Kyalami, wins what has been the... I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm completely dumbstruck with this, Andy, about how interesting this economy challenge on SimGrid really has been.
I just don't know how he's done it. And he's casually just dropped in the fastest lap of the race on the last lap as well. 142.06 is faster than anyone went all race. That should not have been possible. It's as simple as that. So, I mean, well, who knows? Who knows? That's exactly, though, the kind of unpredictability we hoped this race would throw up. We knew it was all going to boil down to the final few minutes, that some would get it right, some would get it wrong. Black Goldsaw clearly got it very right in a race that really only had to win by the smallest possible margin. He went and won by nearly a quarter of a minute. Astonishing.
Wow. Could you believe that? Bastian Richter rounds out the top two. 14.3 seconds adrift. Then it was Renato Dornals. Luke Whitehead from 16th to 4th. And very, very hot weather as well. 44 degrees was the track temperature at the end of the race. Leon Otoki in 5th. Valentin Barrier recovered to 6th position ahead of Timo Berkel from Leipert Esports, who started in 11th, finished 7th at the end of that. Marco Bischoff, Patrick Nage, and Lucas Kreutzer rounded out the top 10. Jardier would cross the line 11th ahead of Team Cake's Sebastian Handler. So a good run for Sebastian there. And he started down in... I think he started outside of the top 30. Sebastian Handler to P13 at the end of the... P12 at the end of the race. Jan Kaminski, Jordan Soanes, and Mika Wojcik rounded out the top 15. Then you've got Grazel, Lozanov, amongst others, Muirhead, Giovanni Migazzi as well. I'm completely dumbfounded. I'm absolutely dumbfounded. But, you know, that was the slowest formation lap we've ever had here. And we're even asking for people to bring an Economy Challenge Championship into this as well. Oh my godfathers.
I've seen a few of the suggestions. Maybe next time it should be an 82-minute race. So I think, yeah, just keep ramping it up by 2 minutes every time. Eventually, even Black Goldsaw would run out of fuel, I suppose. But yeah, a terrific race. And it's one of those races that, on the face of it, shouldn't be that exciting, really. A load of drivers driving around as slowly as possible, trying to save fuel. And actually, it was a great spectacle, wasn't it? There was some really good racing, some fascinating strategy, and it really did keep us guessing literally down to the final few hundred meters. Fantastic. I'd definitely do this again. I've loved that.
Yeah, that makes two of us there. Well, let's see if we can get some drivers in for an interview. And funnily enough, we've actually got our runner-up here on the Economy Challenge. Let's see if we can drag in Bastian Richter from Unicorns of Love. So, Bastian, good evening. Thank you for joining us in the commentary box. Very interesting Economy Challenge here at Kyalami. You managed to pick up second position following dramas for Leon, but... Black Goldsaw was a man that was very, very much untouchable tonight, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, indeed. It was a very fun race, I must say, but the Bentley was just pretty strong pace-wise, and also I think it has had a little bit the advantage in terms of fuel economics. So, yeah, I'm very happy with P2. I mean, it was a little bit unfortunate with the contact in the last turn with P3. But I believe that he was a little bit lacking there, and so I couldn't really avoid it. And yeah, just try to stay out of trouble the whole race and save a little bit of fuel. Mm-hmm. And yeah, ended up being a bit lucky, I guess.
I mean, where were the biggest opportunities for the Aston Martin to save fuel? I mean, obviously Mineshaft is one of them, but probably going through into the kink. On the start-finish straight and then down into turn 2. Those were the two biggest opportunities where you guys were able to maximise fuel economy, weren't you?
Yeah, exactly. So the Aston itself didn't really have the opportunity to save fuel with the engine mappings. So I had to do it with lift and coast and a bit of short shifting, and the kink at T1 and Mineshaft was were the main points. And then in Sunset, it was very easy to drive if you just coast a bit into sunset. You don't have to brake, unsettle the car. So I ended up almost being faster with that. So yeah, it worked quite good, I think.
Yeah, well, Bastian Richter from Unicorns of Love, thank you for joining us, and congratulations on finishing as the runner-up here on the Economy Challenge on the SimGrid.
Thank you very much.
Right, you guys want questions answered. Let's bring the winner in here, shall we? Without further ado, our winner of the inaugural Economy Challenge here on the SimGrid. Let's bring in Black Goldsaw if we can. So, our winner of the inaugural Economy Challenge, Black Goldsaw. Well done tonight. We have one question. How did you make that work?
It's quite simply, it's lift and coasting the entire race. Pretty much every straight, even the middle sector with the corners, just coast every corner and stay in slipstream from people.
What's even more impressive is that you set the fastest lap of the Economy Challenge on the final lap of the race. I mean, credit to you, and winning by over 14 seconds at the end of what, we didn't know what was gonna happen. Whether we know that Jardier ran out of fuel, I think, and got pushed over the line by Gergelik and Sabo, but it still kept him in the top 11 at the end of the race. But we saw that your lap times were very, very consistent. Was there a particular point in the race when you knew, well, now is the time for me to stop lifting and coasting and just go for broke and just push like crazy? Because you kept it rather consistent. I mean, how much fuel did you have left at the end of the race, if you don't mind me asking?
With the out lap, I still had 5.2 liters left.
So you still could have done another 2 and a bit laps then before running out completely. Wow.
Yeah.
That's very impressive. But Black Goldsaw, literally you came into quali, did 4 laps, put it P3, and you managed to outfox and outwit everybody on the the remaining 46 drivers. Well done tonight here on the Economy Challenge.
Yeah, thank you. It was a really fun event, not gonna lie. It's different, how do you call it, strategy racing like this. So when you get to push the car eventually in the last 5 laps, for me, was really weird, actually. Almost felt like I got a different car. It was weird.
Brilliant. Well done tonight, Black Goldsaw, our inaugural Economy Challenge winner here on the SimGrid.
Yes, thank you, guys.
Okay, well, that really wraps it up for the interviews here on the SimGrid for the inaugural Economy Challenge. Andy McEwan, I'd be really interested if there was a championship, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, because I think it's something that the drivers would learn, and so the more races they do like this, the better they'll get at it. But I think if you sort of tweak the format a bit every time, then yeah, that would be a fascinating championship. And of course, some racetracks are going to be easier to save fuel at than others. So yeah, it would be interesting to see how this translated to a different circuit, maybe a circuit with slightly fewer of these long straights into big braking points where they can really do a lot of lifting and coasting. It was interesting to hear there that Black Goldsaw said he was even lifting and coasting through the more technical sections, up through turns 3 and 4, through the crocodiles as well. So if we went to a circuit that was full of tight corners like that, then it will be interesting to see if we got the same result. But I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fascinating. I love a race that's got a strategic edge to it, and this was about as strategic as they come. So yeah, I'm all for more of these in the future.
Yeah, well, both myself and Andy have had a fantastic time this evening. Big thank you, first of all, to you all for watching. As always, we can't thank our backers and sponsors enough. Firstly, Coach Dave Academy, where you can pick up your relevant setups for Assetto, Corsa, Competizione, and also be trained by some very, very well-accomplished GT3 drivers, including the likes of Jordan Pepper, amongst others. Also, you can head over to their, as you can just see on your screens there, so you can see like track maps, Assetto Corsa Competizione setups, and then you can really up your game with proper sim coaching. So it's received world-class coaching by professional racing drivers, and, well, Nick Foster, David Perel, and also Jordan Pepper. plenty of experience between the three of them. Also, you can head over to Thrustmaster if you want to get your pedals and your steering wheels sorted out for whatever sim racing endeavours you decide to do, and hopefully that's with us here at the SimGrid. Also, you know, basically like pedal setups, maybe even a cheeky T300 RS like our very own David Christie has bought in weeks past. But also you can head to any of our social medias, so at the SimGrid on Instagram, at the SimGrid here on Facebook, and also sim_grid on Twitter as well. Don't forget, you can also head to thesimgrid.com for all the relevant events. This coming Saturday, we have Super Saturday at Snetterton. It's the final one before May, but it also has the Bentley Challenge, the GT4s, and the Super Trofeos before the 5th and final round of Best of British. And also, if you haven't already heard the news about more female racers by Thrustmaster, Season 3 is very soon to be upon us. Also, the Sprint Cup, you can see there, the meet and greet event on April the 19th, and then Zolder kicks off the season on April 26th. Also, Sprint Cup Season 3, very much towards the business end of proceedings. Round 4 takes place this time next week at the Hungaroring. And also, we have... did anyone hear about the fact that Endurance Cup Season 3 is coming? Yes, it is indeed. But also, before that gets underway, we have the Battle of the Outcasts at Monza on the 29th. That's in 2 weeks' time, between the Emil Frey Jaguar G3 and the Reiter Engineering REX GT3 based on the FISM Lamborghini Gallardo. So on behalf of both Andy McEwan and myself, Alex Goldschmidt, thank you very much for joining us here on the SimGrid. And don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell. We'll see you next time here. Thank you for watching.